Ladies and gentlemen, may I have your attention, please? Please be seated. Ladies and gentlemen, may I have your attention, please? Please be seated. For audience on Zoom, please be ready. Kindly mute your speaker and turn on your camera.
Before we begin, we would like to explain the rules for seminar today. We encourage all to participate. Please focus on listening the session and also to participate in the discussion and ask questions related to the seminar topic during the Q&A session. Please make sure to stay for the duration of the seminar. For participants who are participating via Zoom, if it's possible, kindly turn on your camera and mute your speaker. We do hope that you will follow these rules and fully participate in the seminar. Thank you for your cooperation, and the seminar will be begin. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Best wishes for all of us. Shalom, Om Swastiastu, Namo Buddhaya, Salam Kebajikan.
Welcome to the first International Conference for Research in Early Childhood Education 2024.
Exploration of Research in Early Childhood Education, hosted by Postgraduate Department of Early Childhood Education, Universitas Negeri Jakarta. First of all, we kindly send our gratitude to the Almighty Lord, who has been giving us mercy and blessing, so we can gather in this event under a blissful and contentful state. Allow us to introduce ourselves. My partner, Tiara Roshida Nur Rahmania, and I am Zakia Ramadhani as a master ceremony in this event.
His Excellency Profesor Dr. Komarudin MSI, Rector of Universitas Negeri Jakarta. His Excellency Profesor Ivan Iskandar M. Hum, Vice Rector of Academic Affairs, Universitas Negeri Jakarta. His Excellency Profesor Dr. Ari Saptono, SE MPD, Vice Rector of General Affairs and Finance, Universitas Negeri Jakarta. His Excellency Dr. Andi Hadianto MA, Vice Rector of Student Affairs, Universitas Negeri Jakarta. His Excellency Profesor Dr. Fahru Rozi MPD, Vice Rector of International Cooperation Affairs, Universitas Negeri Jakarta. His Excellency Head of Research and Community Service Unit, Universitas Negeri Jakarta.
His Excellency Profesor Dedi Purwana ES Mbes, Postgraduate Director of Universitas Negeri Jakarta. The Honorable Vice Director for Academic Postgraduate of Universitas Negeri Jakarta, Profesor Wardani Rahayu. The Honorable Vice Director of General Affairs and Finance, Postgraduate of Universitas Negeri Jakarta, Profesor Muhammad Japar.
The Honorable Professor Marek Tesar, University of Auckland,
Recording
New
in
Zealand.
progress.
The Honorable Associate Professor Nikolai Veresov, Monash University, Australia.
The Honorable Professor Dr. Yuliani Nurani MPD, Universitas Negeri Jakarta.
The Honorable Assistant Professor Dr. Glikeria Fragiadaki, Aristotle University, ICRECE.
The Honorable Ade Dwi Utami, MPD, PhD, Chairperson of International Conference for Research in Early Childhood Education 2024 Committee.
The Honorable to all Senates, Professors, and lecturers in Postgraduate Universitas Negeri Jakarta.
And also greetings for our beloved audience who participate in this conference.
In this beautiful moment, we would like to welcome our beloved keynote speakers today, Professor Marek Tesar, Professor Nikolai Veresov, Professor Dr. Yuliani Nurani, and Assistant Professor Dr. Glikeria Fragiadaki.
We are very enthusiastic and happy to welcome all the speakers today.
We have several agendas, so allow us to read several sequences of our agenda on this seminar. The first is opening. The second is singing Indonesia National Anthem and March of Universitas Negeri Jakarta. The third is a report from Conference Chairperson Committee.
The fourth is welcoming and opening speech. The sixth is reading a prayer. The seventh is seminar session. The seventh is parallel session. And the last one is closing.
The next agenda is singing Indonesia National Anthem and March of Universitas Negeri Jakarta. For audience in this room, please rise for a moment.
Indonesia
Thank you. The audience in this room, please be seated. Ladies and gentlemen, the next agenda is report from Conference Chairperson Committee Ade Dwi Utami MPD PhD. Ms. Ami, time is yours.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. His Excellency Rector of Universitas Negeri Jakarta, Profesor Dr. Komarudin, Vice Rector of Academic Affairs Universitas Negeri Jakarta, Dr. Ivan Iskandar, Vice Rector of General Affairs and Finance Universitas Negeri Jakarta, Profesor Dr. Ari Saptono, Vice Rector of Student Affairs Universitas Negeri Jakarta, Dr. Andi Hadianto, Vice Rector of International Cooperation Affairs Universitas Negeri Jakarta, Profesor Dr. Fahru Rozi, Head of Research and Community Service Unit Universitas Negeri Jakarta, Profesor Dr. Iwan Sugihartono, Director of Postgraduate Universitas Negeri Jakarta, Profesor Dr. Dedi Purwana, Vice Rector of Academic Affairs Postgraduate Universitas Negeri Jakarta, Profesor Dr. Wardani Rahayu, Vice Rector of General Affairs and Finance Postgraduate Universitas Negeri Jakarta, Profesor Dr. M. Japar, the Honorable Keynote Speakers, Profesor Marek Tesar, University of Auckland, New Zealand, Associate Professor Nikolai Veresov, Monash University, Australia, Profesor Dr. Yuliani Nurani, MPD, Universitas Negeri Jakarta, Assistant Professor Dr. Glyceria Fragiadargi, Aristotle University, Greece, all Senate professors and lecturers in Universitas Negeri Jakarta, and our beloved audience and participants. It is with immense pleasure and a deep sense of responsibility that I stand here today as the head of the committee for this prestigious event, the first International Conference for Research in Early Childhood Education 2024. On behalf of the entire organizing committee, I extend a warm welcome to each one of you. Your presence here is a testament for us to share commitment to fostering the well-being and development of young children around the world through rigorous research and innovative early childhood practices. This conference brings together a diverse group of professionals, researchers, educators, policymakers, and advocates from all over countries: United States of America, United Kingdom, New Zealand, Norway, Australia, Greece, and of course, Indonesia. Universitas Negeri Medan, Universitas Pendidikan Indonesia, Universitas Nusa Cendana, Badan Research dan Inovasi Negara, ISI Surakarta, Universitas Negeri Gorontalo, Universitas Mula Warman, Universitas Negeri Yogyakarta, Universitas Pendidikan Ganesha, Universitas Negeri Padang, and many others. With a total 112 presenters, all united by a common goal to enhance the lives of children during their golden age. Our theme this year, Exploration in Early Childhood Research, reflect our dedication to advancing our understanding and implementation of effective early childhood programs. The first years of life are crucial as the lay of the foundation for child cognitive, social, emotional, and physical development. It is our collective responsibilities to ensure that every child has access to high quality of early childhood experiences that will enable them to develop. I would like to extend my heartfelt gratitude to our keynote speakers, invited speakers, committee members, and volunteers that have worked tirelessly to make this conference a reality. Your support and dedication are invaluable. In closing, I wish you all a productive and inspiring conference. May our time together be filled with insightful discussions, lasting connections, and renewed commitment to nurturing the future of young children around the world to a better quality of early childhood education practices. Thank you and enjoy the conference.
Check. Okay. Thank you, Ms. Ami, for the report of today's agenda.
Let's skip on the next agenda. It is welcoming speech from the postgraduate director of Universitas Negeri Jakarta, which is represented by Professor Dedi Purwana ASM Bus. Professor Dedi, please take the floor.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. His Excellency Professor Dr. Komarudin, Rector of Universitas Negeri Jakarta. His Excellency Dr. Ivan Iskandar, who are now joined from Zoom, a Vice Rector for Academic Affairs. His Excellency Professor Dr. Ari Saptono, Vice Rector for Finance Affairs. His Excellency Dr. Andi Haryanto, Vice Rector for Student Affairs. His Excellency Professor Dr. Fahrul Roji, Vice Rector for Cooperation and Planning. And also our honorable speaker, Professor, Marek Tessa from University of Auckland, New Zealand. The honorable speaker, Professor Annette Hellman from University of Gothenburg, Sweden. The honorable Professor Yuliani Nurani from Universitas Negeri Jakarta. The honorable speaker, Associate Professor Nikolai Perez from Monash University, Australia. First of all, I would like to welcome you to the first International Conference for Research in Early Childhood Education. As Dr. Ade Utami said, that this conference aims to create an ideal forum for research dissemination for those who are interested in early childhood education, early child education study, and all scope related to early childhood education For example, research trends in early childhood education, early childhood research methodology, children development, innovation in teaching and learning for early childhood education, policy in early childhood education practices, supporting families in early years setting, paradigm and theories in early childhood education, and the last one, ICT in early childhood education. I believe this conference is very important because we will discuss in terms of how, what, why early education is important. As we know, early childhood is the important age in human life development. I couldn't imagine if you do as a teacher, if you do as a lecturer, then you do mistake to teach them, the words is disappear. The word doesn't have a good future. Because we believe that early childhood education, when you teach properly, then the words, it will be better. So I believe this conference very interesting and very important, where you can share your research results and discuss with other audience and come with the a policy how to have a good early childhood education for the future. Thanks for Professor Dr. Yuliani, head of doctorate program in early childhood education. The only one doctorate program in Indonesia for early childhood education and accredited international standard. So please be applause for Dr. Yuliani Nurani. And also thanks to all committee under supervised by Mrs. Ade Utami, PhD, who effortless and tireless to conduct this conference to be running smoothly and then bring postgraduate flag to the world. Thank you very much and welcome to this international conference. And I would like to ask His Excellency Dr. Ivan Iskandar to deliver opening remarks and officially inaugurate this conference. Again, thank you very much. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh and enjoy this conference.
Thank you very much to Professor Dedi for welcoming speech. Let's move on to the next agenda. It is opening speech from the Vice Rector of Academic Affairs, which is represented by Dr. Ivan Iskandar M.Hum. Dr. Ivan, please you may begin.
Is my sound audible for all of you? Bisa terdengarkah suara saya?
Yes, clear.
Baik, terima kasih. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Salam sejahtera, selamat pagi untuk kita semuanya. Dear Excellencies, distinguished guests, dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, it is a true pleasure for me to welcome you all to the first International Conference for Research in Early Childhood Education. Allow me in this occasion to express my deepest gratitude to these prominent figures. Our keynote speakers, Professor Marek Tessa from University of Auckland, New Zealand, Associate Professor Nikila Ferasov from Monash University, Australia, Professor Dr. Yuliani Nurani, MPD, Universitas Negeri Jakarta, and Professor Annette Hellman, University of Gothenburg, Sweden. Thank you for taking off your busy time and schedule to attend this important seminar. I also wish to express my gratitude to the Director of Postgraduate Program, Professor Dedi Purwana, and the Chair of the first International Conference for Research in Early Childhood Education, Dr. Ade and team, all of the chairs of study programs in postgraduate schools, the committee members. I would like to thank you for all of you for presiding over this event. It is also an honor for me to welcome the representatives and participants from our partner academies and experts to this conference today. Early childhood education is prominent to discuss because it deals with the golden age periods of children. It is said that children from birth to 6 years of age experience a golden period where they are highly receptive to various types of stimuli. During this sensitive period, children's physical and psychological functions mature, and they are better able to respond to the environment. And this year's theme, with the theme is research in early childhood education, I believe finds its moment to thrive, because we are dealing with crisis in education, particularly teachers' crisis. What are the alarming findings regarding the shortage of teachers globally? The Global Report on Teachers claim that our planet Earth now, our world, need for 44 million primary and secondary teachers by 2030. And this includes demand for 7 out of teachers at the secondary level. And in Indonesian context, Indonesia is facing an imminent teacher shortage crisis, expecting a shortfall of 1.3 million teachers in 2024. It means this year, with 70,000 teachers retiring annually. So through this conference, it is expected that this conference will result in scientific recommendations of research in early childhood education, transfer of expertise among the participants and the keynote speakers, the promotion of young researchers and teachers in early childhood education, and the voice for International Conference for Research in Early Childhood Education to be audible globally, so that we all together through this conference can be productive in solving the problems in education, particularly in early childhood education. I wish you the most fruitful day with the interesting and stimulating discussions and exchange of knowledge, so that we can together envisage the future of early childhood education. And the committee, if I'm not mistaken, I am allowed to officially open this conference. I need the confirmation. Is it time for me now to open the conference officially so that our speakers can begin with the presentations? Ibu Ade? Am I allowed to officially open this conference?
Yes.
Okay. Well, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, with all your consent and by expecting the blessing from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, let's officially open this conference by saying Basmallah. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. I now pronounce this conference officially opens. Thank you. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Before we start this international conference, let us together to offer prayers and allow me to lead in an Islamic ways. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahi rabbil alamin. Hamdan syakirin, hamdan na'imin, hamdan yuafi ni'amahu wa yukafidu mazidah. Ya Rabbana lakal hamdu kama yanbaghi li jalali wajhikal karim wa ali musultanik. Allahumma salli ala sayyidina Muhammad walhamdulillahi rabbil alamin. Allahumma rabbana zalamna anfusana wa illam taghfir lana wa tarhamna lanakunanna minal khasirin. Rabbana zidna ilman warzuqna fahman. Rabbana atina fid dunya hasanah wa fil akhirati hasanatan wa qina adzaban nar. Subhanaka rabbil izzati amma yasifun wa salamun alal mursalin walhamdulillahi rabbil alamin. Wassalamu ala mursalin walhamdulillahi rabbil alamin. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Aprianto, for leading our prayer session today.
The next agenda, we will having Professor Marek Tesar from University of Auckland, New Zealand as our first keynote speaker. And please welcome Lara Fridani, MPSI PhD, as a moderator of this session. Mrs. Lara, time and place is yours.
Thank you, Ms. Tiara and Ms. Zakia. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Ladies and gentlemen, I am Lara. I would like to welcome you all again to this first session, which will be presented by Professor Marek Tesar. Before the presentation, I would like to introduce our honorable keynote speaker, which I believe many of us have known him, maybe have read about his books and articles, or watching his lecture in YouTube or other social media, or probably have met him directly in conference events in some countries. I will share screen about Professor Marek Tesar, but not all of his job, because there are many achievements that he has got in the last more than 20 years probably. So if we see here that Professor Marek Tesar has lots of jobs, Head of School of Learning Development and Professional Practice, Associate Dean International at the Faculty of Education and Social Work, University of Auckland, Director of Center for Global Childhood, the Chair of Early Years, Childhood Studies and Child Development Research and Teaching Hub. The academic work and consultancy focuses on educational policy, philosophy, pedagogy, methodology, and curriculum, and draws on his background as a qualified teacher. Leader of two leading learned societies in his fields, steering committee of the Reconceptualizing Early Childhood Education, elected president of Philosophy of Education Society of Australasia. And we can see also from his profile about his publication and others' achievement. He has about probably more than 200 peer-reviewed publications, edits 4 educational book series with renowned publishers, editor of 6 academic journals, sits on over 20 international editorial boards. And also there are many books that he has published. These are the recent books, about home in early childhood education. So we can see from the year of 2024, reframing the everyday in early childhood pedagogy in 2023, the university as an ethical academy in 2023, the methodology and philosophy of collective writing, an education philosophy and theory reader in 2021, Handbook of Global Childhood in 2021, Theorizing Post-Human Childhood Studies 2020, and other things. And also the recent journal articles and book chapters. Maybe I don't have to read it one by one, so you can see from his profile directly. I'll just show in this screen Professor Marek's articles and book chapters in 2022, 2023, and 2021. Actually, he has lots of other books and articles before these years. And also, he has distinction honors, lots of achievement. Fellow of PESA Society 2023, adjunct professor at UPI University Indonesia, world-class professor appointment, Ministry of Education and Culture Indonesia, which is sponsored by UPI, research fellow, adjunct professor, New Zealand Association for Research in Education, IRA, Early Career Fellow, American Educational Research Association, Early Career Research Excellence Award, and actually there are more achievement we can see from his profile. Okay, give applause to Professor Marek. Okay, all right. Without any further ado, let us welcome again Professor Marek Tesar. Professor Marek Tesar, we have time about 1 hour, including your presentation and for ask and questions sessions. Professor Marek, the floor is yours.
Terima kasih and selamat pagi, Ibu Lara. Thank you so much for the very generous introduction that you offered to me. It's I miss Indonesia. I've been there just a couple of weeks ago, visiting colleagues in Bandung and at UPI. So it's wonderful to be involved. I cannot share the screen. It says it's disabled. So if you would enable me, please, to do that, I will share my PowerPoint slide. I still cannot share them. So I think you need to make me co-host or well, anyway, I'm co-host now. Excellent. I can do it now. Right. So kia ora koutou, ko Marek Tesar tōku ingoa, and can you see my slides? Yes.
Yes, we can see your slide clearly.
Excellent. Excellent. So it's a very special and what a wonderful and special opportunity to talk with you, to my great colleagues in Jakarta, and to see many familiar faces that over the past 15 years that I've been involved in Indonesia with various projects, scholarship, colleagues, Ministry of Education, and Simeo Cecep, and all the other universities. It's wonderful to be invited to deliver this keynote address. And when I was thinking what to sort of present, I did wonder about providing some of the interesting ideas about early years curriculum and how we sort of understand it here in Aotearoa, New Zealand. And it's linked to assessment practices. And what are some of those key learnings from both of those things? And I will explain to you why I've chosen this topic and why I think it's really important. I'm head of school of one of the largest schools here in University of Auckland. There's learning development and professional practice, and I'm also associate dean, and running Center for Global Childhoods, which is very transdisciplinary research center. And part of recent conversations in New Zealand has been budget announcement. So as you know, every government every year announces its budget, where they sort of identify what kind of priorities they would like to invest funding to. And perhaps for one of the few times in past 20 years, as far as I can remember, it's perhaps the first time that early childhood was really omitted from any kind of funding scheme, which is very interesting because education overall got quite a bulk of funding, but early childhood education has been really left like a Cinderella. And that's something really interesting, because the idea that we can invest into primary or secondary, into literacy, into these kind of things, and wondering whether that will resolve the crises or the issues in education has really got me thinking that why we don't invest more into the early years. And I wrote a number of papers for, articles for the newspapers, and did some interviews for radios around this topic. And then I sort of started to sort of visualize what it could look like in form of presentations, going back to basics for us to actually understand what early childhood education and care is about. What are some of the key foundational principles of curriculum that we have had here for over 30 years? So colleagues in Australia or in Scandinavia, they used to come here to Aotearoa, New Zealand in 1990s and so on, and they was learning from the curriculum frameworks that we had. But now it almost feels like we should be coming to them to relearn the art of what we've lost based upon some of these funding decisions. So that's what I will be talking about today. Just a brief sort of overview of early childhood education in New Zealand. It's non-compulsory sector, so it's birth to 5. The school starts usually on a child's 5th birthday. When I say on 5th birthday, I mean literally on 5th birthday. That means is that you go to school next day after your birthday. You transition from a non-compulsory to a compulsory sector, and you start your education in a primaries, which is very different environment than early years. In early years, we have an integration of care and education, and that's a very much defined by our policy. But at the same time, as I disclosed before, there is a separation between early childhood and school sectors. So we have some early childhood kindergartens or early childhood centers attached to schools, but it's more, not every school has that, and it's not that traditional sort of pathway that happens. Over the years, we've been very much focused on the idea of participation. That means encouraging really more and more children to attend early childhood education all across the regions, across ethnicities, across the country, which resulted into very diverse early childhood sector with a home-based, center-based, parent and teacher-led, community private with state, very diverse ownership model, which is really skewed towards more highly privatized. About 65 to 70% of early childhood centers in New Zealand are privatized, which is on the upper scale of OECD thinking of what's the ownership model of early years. The participation sort of politics of participation has been very successful, and due to various funding models like 20 hours for 3 to 5 year olds, a fee subsidy for families in need, some equity funding, recently tax cuts for families in need, resulted in quite a high participation level. So we're really talking about 92%, and which you would sort of assume that rest of the children, it's a choice which they're taking, whether staying with their grandparents or being simply at home. So our participation level is very high, including the infants and toddlers, which have always been an area that traditionally hasn't been catered for, and it's only very recently that we have started looking at what kind of courses and what kind of support we need to offer to our teachers who are infants and toddlers teachers, because this area has been long-termly considered to be sitting not under education, but in that kind of English sense, under the nursery type of thing. So, and all of that is sort of framed, so to speak, by our early childhood curriculum since 1996. But really, since 1993, it's been around Tefariki, which been revised in 2017, just very slightly, just a couple of learning outcomes and some other tweaks and some links and added some transitions and updated some theories. But overall, the structure, the feel, the way how early childhood curriculum looks, has been pretty much unchanged for 30 years, which is outstanding outcome for some policy document that's been created in the height of neoliberalism and really survived all the political push and pulls and really allowed us to think differently. What does it mean to live in a country that has stable curriculum, but really the funding model doesn't add up? It raises a question, do we deserve such a good curriculum in a country where we don't invest into early years, which is part of the argument that I'm running. So if you may ask what's going on, and in Indonesia, we often talk about holistic and integrated curriculum and thinking, as we all know, and similarly in Aotearoa New Zealand and in settings, is very similar. So the curriculum framework, policy regulations, and all the associated documents are very much talking about the key things that we are all aware of. So I'll just quickly go through them just to sort of remind ourselves and refresh ourselves. This is what we're focusing on: learning to play, working with a child on his or her level, which means literally working on his or her level. That means physically going down and to be on a child's level, following the child's interests. And that's how you create the curriculum on a daily basis. Focus on the holistic notions of a child development. That means not on those individual developmental areas and needs, but rather you hope that through the holistic approach, they will somehow become visible. So, for example, by developing following child's interest in particular area, we are able to really focus and really develop every developmental area, rather than focusing on them. The indigenous concept of ako, the learning from each other in reciprocal and responsive ways, is really important. And that's been part of the education sector. And that sort of really flows on and spills into the idea of how do we assess. We want to assess children in a holistic way, not in a fragmented way. We're not that interested to understand in early childhood what's the language development of our 3-year-old child. We're far more interested and far more focused on the idea, how do we assess child's overall progress and learning in the line of some of the outcomes and that our curriculum, Tefariki, offers. all of that is linked on the, if someone once asked me, so what's the curriculum is all about? What actually is all happening in New Zealand? And I think that based upon historical and philosophical thinking, where did we get as a country in the past 200 years? It's become very clear that the focus of a curriculum is not on set of skills or on set of learning it's most like a set of learning dispositions, I would say, or certain thinking about developing some working theories about that. And that is about how to live well together as a society. How do you become a confident and competent learner? And associated skill sets and the thinking around it for each and every child and the family that's associated with the center is absolutely critical. So the subject knowledge really emerges through children's societal, cultural, and individual interests. So we're not really interested in teaching math, science, literacy, numeracy, and so on. All of these things, they come through, and they come through the way the curriculum is constructed, the way early childhood center is run, and what actually happens in it. And that actually really links with what we do in New Zealand. In New Zealand, we are researchers, and we conduct the world-class research into early childhood education. And that's some of the work that I've been doing over the past 15 years or so in Indonesia. That means working with colleagues here, supporting their research and doing the work. And just yesterday, I had a meeting. We started a new cohort of Indonesian PhD students who are, again, doing amazing research in Indonesia based upon some of the thinking and models that we developed here in Aotearoa, New Zealand. So this is the curriculum. This is how it looks like. Just hold a second. This is how it looks like. I have a copy here, so you can see it's a physical copy. Every early childhood teacher, educator, or every even teacher has a copy of the Tefariki. It's an amazing document. You can see on a screen that it's the green cover, the pattern that exists here. It reminds you of a woven mat, and that's what the Tefariki means in Maori language. And the idea is that the woven mat is put together by everyone, by teachers, by parents, by children, by community, by ministry, by researchers, by policymakers, by everybody. And it's so strong that in early childhood setting, that mat will be able to carry everybody, each and everyone who is part of it. It's a curriculum for all and for everybody. And that metaphor is very important to utilize. There are 4 foundational principles in the DC curriculum: empowerment, holistic development, family and community, and relationships. So all very important pillars that we utilize. And then we have 5 strands that run across it, and that's well-being, belonging, contribution, communication, exploration. And all of this creates something really important. And that is something that I would argue really creates amazing framework that over 30 years have developed a new generation of children. The respectful image of a child is really that lies underneath that whole image. And I think I want to pause here for a second. I want to pause here because I think that this is something really important, something that actually really addresses some of the key areas that I want to focus on. It speaks about Tefariki as the vision, the curriculum as the vision for children, for our treasure, our taonga, that they are the competent and confident learners and communicators, that they are healthy in mind, body, and spirit. They are secure in their sense of belonging and the knowledge that they make a valued contribution to the society. And here is one of the differences between the earlier and the newer version of the curriculum. And here I want to emphasize how much focus and thinking went into every single word in this policy document. Traditionally, Tefariki was really focused on, was saying that the vision of the document, of the policy, of a society, of early childhood centers, is that children will become, they will enter the early childhood education, and they will leave it as a competent and confident learners, communicators, healthy, all the knowledge that they will make. But you can see that underlined are. They are not will be, they are. What are we saying here? What kind of philosophical ontological turn are we proposing here? We're saying that children already are competent and confident learners. We don't need to wait for them to become some. They don't need to go through the education process. We believe in our children. They are part of a society. They are younger citizens in their own right, and they already are competent and confident learners. We're working with them, which all links to the whole idea, very regio, by the way, but the whole idea of positive image of a child. That means is to really view each child as really unique and capable, and children that sort of you create this positive image. And I don't want to go through all of it. You will have a slide, but the idea that we sort of create this particular image of a child, which we carry as a teacher educator, as a parents, as a society, it really creates a different set of relationships and really different set of foundations, how we want to implement the curriculum and how we're thinking of the investment into early years. The idea of curious child, capable child, creative child, resilient child. That's something, all of it is really, really important. So that means is that we believe that children are curious. They want to explore the world around them. They live in an environment. They are capable. They can change it. They can focus on it. They make choices and decisions. Children are creative. They're recognizing. They can express themselves in a variety of ways. There's a positive environment that provides opportunities for children to explore and express themselves. And there is then the resilient child. That means that they view and recognize children as having the ability to overcome challenges and adversities, and they bounce back from difficult situations. So really that kind of positive environment that provides support and encouragement for children to develop the resilience and coping skills. So you can see that kind of idea of where I'm sort of heading with this. At the same time, there is this negative image of a child, which you can have, and you can have the idea of a very deficit thinking medical model that's sort of asking what's wrong, why this doesn't work, what doesn't work with this child, what is child lacking, the spoiled child, the stereotypical thinking of children as entitled and demanding, the troubled child, this kind of idea that children as inherently problematic or deviant, lead to a perception that they are not capable of learning or improving their behavior. The innocent child, the stereotype, it portrays children as naive and innocent, that can lead recognition of their agency. The miniature adult child. I want to stop here again for a second. I want to pause here because some of you may ask, what's wrong with the innocent child? Why we wouldn't use innocent child as a negative image of a child? Don't we think that children are innocent? Aren't we thinking that the innocency of childhood is really important? Well, yes and no. Yes, we want to think that children are innocent, but by assigning them the characteristic of being an innocent, we are really imposing of them the idea that they shouldn't have a say, they shouldn't have a right, they should be just protected, they should be sheltered, they shouldn't experience the life, they shouldn't try and fail, and most importantly, they shouldn't have an agency to be able to act upon their feelings, their ideas, their actions should be diminished. So I would really seriously consider, if you're thinking about it, that innocence should be considered as a negative image of a child, particularly if it's imagined via adults. Moving on into the idea of assessment that I wanted to discuss here is very important, because assessment is a real way. Assessment is very interesting because assessment, when you ask someone what is assessment, most of the kids will tell you, oh, that's where I'm having a test, or adults will tell you, oh, that's when I need to write an essay, or I need to perform in order to receive certain result, or or it becomes quite performative, focus on the grade, something that's really is seen as a sort of negative model. But I want to, the hierarchy, the curriculum framework helps us, and then us in our training, we help to reframe and reconceptualize what assessment actually may mean in early years. And I love this quote that comes of our curriculum framework that really talks about that assessment makes valued learning visible. Assessment makes valued learning visible. I had to repeat that sentence because I think it's absolutely brilliant. It really nails it. It really provides you with the idea that assessment is here to understand what the child has learned. It makes it visible. You are able to see what children have learned. And then teachers use an assessment to find out about what children know and what they can do, what interests they have, and the way they are progressing, what learning opportunities there are for them, and where additional support may be required. What it doesn't say teachers use assessment to find out what children don't know. See that it's reframing that negative model. It's rather looking at children what they do know, so we can support them. We can support them and praise them, and record them. And I will talk about it in a second, how we do it in New Zealand and the New Zealand model of assessment that we developed. So in that sense, it becomes clear that assessment is not summative, but it's formative, really. So it's formative, it intends to support curriculum planning and really enhances any kind of learning. It's also useful for informing children, families, and other teachers and external support agencies about children's learning and about how we progress over time. So what it also means, though, is that the assessment will become both informal and formal. What it means is that we will schedule some time to think about it, but at the same time, it will also informal assessment, because teachers will listen and observe and participate and respond to children who are engaged in certain mundane, everyday experiences and events. And it leads really directly to changes in the teaching and learning environment that will really help children to reach those long-term goals that the curriculum framework sets up for them. So the key questions that I want to propose to you, and as a takeaway from this part of a presentations, are: whose learning is really valued? How do teachers really assess what children know and can do? And how do we know that children make progress? And in what? And where do learning opportunities come from? So all of these are really important for questions for us to consider. And that's something that it's not easy to answer those questions, but it's great questions to have as philosophical teachers that are working with young children and working with curriculum document like the hierarchy to sort of understand and have those questions constantly present, to be able to respond with the right pedagogical approaches and to be able to really utilize and really make sure that our curriculum is fully empowered and put into practice. So I already mentioned that there are three parts to assessment. There is assessment for learning, there is assessment of learning, and assessment for teaching. And just to sort of summarize them, what they actually mean is assessment for learning is really simple. It's really easy because it's a formative process of really gathering information about learning to support further learning. So we create this kind of environment, and we will really process it and gather information about learning to support further learning. Assessment of learning is a summative account of child skills, knowledge, and attitudes. So think about it like this. When you are with the children and you sort of provide them a feedback and provide them particular opportunity, you get the information about their learning and you provide it back to them, it will support their further learning. That's a formative way, because you're forming particular attitudes towards future and towards learning. But If you provide just a summative assessment, like for example, you say to child, excellent, or a good job, it doesn't really, it's a summative account. You are appreciating and appraising child's learning, but it's also very much summative account. It doesn't really extend any child's learning. Child doesn't know how to extend further. They don't actually extend their skills, knowledge, and attitudes. They will just get a grade. They will just get acknowledgement. They will get a praise. So you can see the big difference. And then there's a third thing, that's assessment for teaching. Teachers making use of assessment to inform teaching, and they are taking action and reflection. And that's something really important, because I think that a lot of the times teachers don't realize that they can use assessment to inform their own practice. That the assessment is actually not just for children, they are for themselves. Through assessment, they are able to improve their own practice and their own pedagogical approaches and understanding of curriculum. So my argument is that all three of them should be really, ideally, integrated and work together. Let me take you through this garden analogy. I sort of like the garden analogies here. So if you think of students or children as plants for a second, you will have a formative assessment, which is like a feeding, watering. You provide them with nutrition, and you're directly affecting plants' growth as they do. That's a formative assessment. Summative assessment, on the other hand, is measuring the plants. It may be interesting sort of to compare and to contrast all the measurements bid and to know how they are, but it doesn't really affect in any way how the plants are growing, correct? So it doesn't. It's just simply, we just note, right, this plant, 7 centimeters tall, this has whatever, flower is about 3 centimeters diameter, but that's all. It doesn't actually impact upon the growth. And that's really important. That's why the formative assessment is important. And similarly, what's really important is keeping it complex. We cannot simplify the idea of pedagogic curriculum, early years, and children. If what we assess is too simple, we will not in any way do justice or respect to the complexity of our curriculum, which doesn't separate out, as I said before, any kind of those social, emotional, cognitive, physical development, and the close connection between children's learning and the 3 R's: reciprocal, responsive, and respectful relationships between people, places, and things in our settings. That's essential. We need to have them all together. And the idea that the outcomes include a sense of identity as a competent, confident learner is really important. And again, I cannot emphasize enough how the notion of identity is sort of really linked through, and it's really important. So assessment for all children needs to be consistent with the principles of the curriculum. And here you can see again the curriculum very much woven together like that mat, and you have again the strands and the goals. So we debated it. What we didn't debate is that we're creating a new language of learning here. And that's something really important. Children are as active participants in their own learning, and they really are capable of developing those working theories about themselves, about the people, about places and lives. They are valued as active learners who choose, plan, and challenge. Do you see that positive image of a child here? This is what I was talking about. It's providing children in the center, and it's really thinking about how children can make that kind of sense of reality. There's a climate of reciprocity, listening to children, even if they cannot speak, observing how they feel, the curiosity, the interest, the knowledge, the encouragement towards their own learning. You get the gist, you get the sense of the positivity of an image of a child. How do we see children? That's a key question to ask. The Farrakhan then focuses on those motivational aspects of learning. So it's really trying to encourage that curriculum, that fragmented, rather than focusing on those fragmented skills and knowledge. It encourages teachers to really support children's ongoing learning dispositions, and that's the key. So you understand that how we created that new learning. So what matters really? What matters is the planning, is the holistic view, is the engagement with the family, are the learning dispositions, working theories, and early childhood centers philosophies. All those things matters. as we sort of try to create a high quality early childhood education. And all of that is really important, because if we're thinking about something here, we need invest into early years, which comes to my original argument. Without investing into early years, there cannot be a high quality early childhood education. Yes, we can focus on particular aspects, on particular parts. And yes, we can focus on participation, but we cannot focus on quality. And in all fairness, the quality of early childhood education and care is the key idea how to make early years better. And how to support our children, our younger citizens, and our society. Because look at it this way, children make their own judgments about their achievements, and they develop their sense of what counts as good work for themselves as learners. And that's really important. Children often self-regulate, that is, they self-assess and give themselves instructions about what to do. This includes seeing mistakes as part of their process of learning. Like, imagine that we would let that control of assessment and let children lead the assessment. And that's what's happening in the best New Zealand early childhood centers. Children decide what to record. Children decide that action, that positive image, what to include in their portfolios. And when the resources are being used by children, for example, a completed puzzle, they provide the feedback about that performance. And then we document. We really document what happens. That's a communication tool. It's appropriated by teachers and practitioners or researchers on rethinking, shaping, learning, teaching, knowledge, understanding. That's really important, because the key purpose is here really to support the construction of that identity, of the learner's identity that the child can carry on and utilize further, not only in their own future, but also in their own local community, and they can focus on learning. How am I doing with times? Do I have 10 more minutes, or what's the...
Yes, 7 more minutes, Professor Marek.
7 more minutes. Excellent. Thank you. It's very precise. Excellent. So this is I love this image, because this image really helps me about the assessment, thinking about assessment. It really helps me because it's really speaks about it's mad scientists that are blinded. They are examining an elephant, and some of them is touching a tail. It's a robe, and touching the ears. It's a fan, and so on and so forth. And they can't see that it's an elephant. We can't see it's a child if we're standing too close and examining every single developmental domain. Similarly, when we used to use time sampling, where we used to do recording inclusions and exclusion events, so-called event recordings, when we used to do these old learning stories that were very structured, we couldn't really capture the whole idea of a child, like with an elephant. But once we get into the idea of what learning story is as assessment practice, it really changes quite a lot of things, because here we're talking about tracking children's strengths and interests. We're talking about development of children's identities, interactions between adults and learners, tracking and progressing of the development, teachers, parents, and children working together on creating meaningful learning. And let me show you an example. So this is a learning story of my children. This is my boy, William, and this is the learning story of him. And you can see how the learning story is addressing his key learnings in the early childhood center. You can see how the teacher is talking directly to William, saying, "Dear William," is highlighting long-term goals for children, who they will be, what they will become. It tells a story about William. It speaks to the William, and that's something really important. Similarly to my younger one, George, it talks to him. George, who I think was only a year and a half here, and talks about his puzzles and how his patience and persistence, it pays off. And it's asking very important question. What is happening? What have you learned, George? What have you done? Praising the success. And really are relating again to the long-term goals. What it will mean for a child. For George, this will mean problem solving and persisting, working alongside others. the key skill sets that will enable you to live well together. So what assessment in early childhood education really does is it creates the environment where our everyday practice, and when I say we, I'm talking about children, families, teachers, and others, really observe, that means notice, then try to understand what's happening, that recognize, and then write it up, respond, and then record and revisit. So here you got your model of assessment: notice, recognize, respond, record, and revisit. And the learning story is born. So this kind of practice of assessment holistic practices include skills, knowledges, dispositions. It's very much New Zealand wide. This has been developed in Hamilton and at the University of Waikato over the years by Margaret Carr, one of the co-writers of the Whāriki. And it really goes deeper into children's interests. It's make learning rather than activity visible. Let me repeat that. It makes learning rather than activity visible. We focus on learning. Good learning stories focus on learning, not on the stories. And that really matters. So does it really work? So that's a good question that people often ask. Do learning stories really work? Is it better than baby pizza or something else? Well, I would argue it is. But they need to be good. The teachers need to have time, need to have space, working conditions to actually do right and make learning stories really matter, because case studies really indicate that transformative power learning stories have really long-term positive effect. And I can attest, my own children, they pick up every weekend their old learning stories and they revisit them. They revisit their own learning. They understand what they knew and what they didn't know. So that's really important. Research also showed that over the time, they help themselves really to become competent and confident learners. And similarly, the teachers use assessment to find out about children, what they know and can do, what interests them, what are the learning opportunities, and what support they may require. So they deal with the competence, continuity, and community. So you can see how that whole socio-cultural wrap-up around learning stories is really important, because the idea of becoming competent and building your identity of a learner with the continuity, progress over the time and across different contexts, and build that community, links with family and community, is absolutely essential. Which leads me to the final slide of the presentation, where I just wanted to say, well, I started with the point is whether early childhood curriculum and early years really matter. How can we have a government that doesn't invest into early years when you can see that clear progress and those clear links? I really hope that in this presentation, I was able to demonstrate why it really matters investing into early years. What are the trajectories of good curriculum, pedagogical, and assessment practices earlier on in a child's life, all the way from infants, toddlers, and young children, and how you can sketch a trajectory towards the future of a successful development. Because it's about really complexity, acknowledging the complexity of each family and child, and understand that they are developing on their own terms, and we are here to support them on the journey. We are here to understand their strengths and support them in that, and we are here to develop their competences, their learning dispositions, and really support and work with their working theories. And I think that's the key where I want us to go. I want us to acknowledge that early childhood education is complex and it's messy. And it's okay to be messy sometimes. But at the same time, it's so important to understand that without investment into early years, we won't be able to provide high quality early childhood education and care that all of our children deserve. And I will stop there. Terima kasih, Kiora. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for your kind attention.
Thank you very much. Just really on time. Thanks again, Professor Marek, for your inspiring information, knowledge, and practice experience, which have been given to us. I believe they are really widen our perspective, especially about early years curriculum, and assessment. I just give a very, very brief summary before asking and question sessions that Professor Marek has remind us about the importance of early childhood and its contribution to education. And he also share about early childhood in New Zealand, the theory and the practice and the philosophy, and then the sector policy, participation rates, funding, etc. And then also he explained about the learning, the approach of learning for children, how children learning through play, following their interests, holistic child development, etc. And then the curriculum also from everybody, that teacher, parents, society, and also children have to collaborate and contribute. Yeah, so each of them has voices. And then the principle of curriculum and the strength. This is also a very interesting topic. And then which is very what we call it, about the respective image of the child, the Wariki vision, very very interesting, that we have to respect the child as they are, and that it is very important to have positive image of the child, that they are curious, capable, creative, etc. And then you also remind us not to have negative image of the child. Yeah, and then you stress the innocent child. Yeah, this is very interesting. And also the last about assessment, the importance of assessment that makes valued learning visible. Yeah, this is also will be a very good discussion, I think. And then thank you, Professor Marek, for sharing your experience about your children, yeah, your children at school, and how the assessment is conducted, and also explain the challenge that will happen when teacher doing the assessment. And then you give the image of the elephant, which is very inspiring for us. Yeah, and I believe that some of us here already know about the assessment. They already, some teachers here and students in early childhood knows already about time sampling, recording, learning story and stuff. So I think we still have about 15 minutes to 17 minutes, and we will give you opportunity to ask Professor Marek. And please also give your name and affiliation, or maybe you come from certain country or certain city. Yes, please. Wait. I just said there is Professor Pasli Jalal, and then Chitra Asri. Yeah. And then anyone can help me who raise her hand? Farah Anjani. Maybe three of you first. Professor Pasli Jalal, silakan.
Thank you, Bulara. Thank you very much, Professor Marek, for very interesting and comprehensive presentation. You mentioned how difficult for us who are working in the ECD sector, yeah, to convince the policymaking to provide sufficient funding. And they tend to work based on the data, on quantitative, on proof, on comparison, etc. How do you convince them at the, let's say, at the government level, the merits of the learning process that lead to how the children really learn, and detecting individually, like you mentioned, based on formative and sometimes summative assessment. But then how do you aggregate that at national level, provincial level? And also, how do you compare the successful of individual school when they need different level of funding from, let's say, from the local government? So this is my question: how to convince them at various level, while our data is quite messy, as you mentioned, but they need some kind of the evidence base, usually using quantitative approach. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Pak Fasli, for a wonderful question. Just an easy one, right, to start us off, to answer. I mean, and before I answer that, I just want to acknowledge Ibu Lara for a wonderful moderating and summary, and terima kasih for really thank you for great great MC work. Pak Fasli, it's a very interesting question. I think you sort of asking the wrong person, because I said that I struggle to convince my own government to do that. So I think that if you wanted to learn from me, please don't. But I can offer some of the observation why I think that I know why we are failing, and a little bit understand why Indonesia is failing. I just had a very interesting discussions couple of weeks ago at UPI, actually, around this topic of funding and how financial flows. I think that overall, and I promised myself I'm going to be better at that. As someone who is I'm a researcher. I'm professor. I'm running a large university unit and research center, and I publish my work in journals, and usually behind the paywall. My participants usually, I need to send them the copy of the journal because they can't log in and read them. And it often reminds me of that. That's not the way how I can actually convince policymakers, stakeholders, even public, about the importance of early years and importance of investing into our teaching workforce or investing into our children. Yet it shouldn't be that hard, because we all, either have or know someone or been at some point in our life a child. So it shouldn't be that difficult to make that argument why it matters. And part of my way how I dealing with it this year, which is a very difficult year for early childhood education and care worldwide, I have to say, but in New Zealand specifically, is that I rather stopped writing some of the papers and I started writing publicly, started writing for the papers, op-ed, doing interviews on radio and in TV, which is really pushing myself, to be honest, because it's not that easy to communicate complex research findings and data sets and everything to the public. But that's what I committed to. When I was late joining you, because I was just finishing a radio interview actually about the same issue, about the lack of funding into early years and why we need to invest. And part of what I've learned is that the only way how we can do it, the only way how you learn doing it is by doing it. There's no other way how to prepare yourself, just to push yourself to try it and to start translating some of those key knowledges that we have in our field that are, for us, almost tokenistic, or something that wouldn't even bother saying in the conference environment, but clearly communicating it with the public. Because, like, for example, linking the child success of investment into early years with the future literacy scores, or, for example, thinking about the criminal and justice system in the future and child attending early childhood education. There are some really excellent data that we have, for example, from OECD, that we, for example, have from multiple other sources that we can utilize into something very powerful. I agree with you that data are messy, and I always very careful when I start debating data with policymakers, because one could argue the data are set and there shouldn't be any space for interpretation. But all of us who are doing knowledge translation work, we actually know that it's all about how you report data and how you show them and which part you do. So it's actually really, really complex. But I wouldn't give up. I would be what I tend to do is I tend to combine. Part of it is the story of a knowledge from early childhood field, and part of it is to highlighting some of the key data and where it's sort of taking us towards the future. And I'm not saying I'm that successful, but I'm working my way. Ministry, for example, already contacted me through this work this year to and so did some other sort of and more media are interested discussing what actually is happening in education sector. And they're starting to get it. That kind of whole using analogy or using metaphors is very useful. Thinking, well, how you wanna grow, the branches of a tree if you don't care about feeding and looking after it, early on. It's very important to understand that there is that kind of, despite I'm not developmentalist, but to understand that there is that idea still that we as a human beings and we are developing, and if we not support that growth, and if you don't support those first 1,000 days, 3,000 days discourses, how will you planning to fix it by pouring millions and millions and millions of, or in your case, billions of rupiah into literacy and numeracy further on primary or secondary if you don't actually support both participation and the quality of early child education in Indonesia? You've done amazing work in creating, one village, one child policy, for example, that you had, where you really focused on how do we get children into early childhood center, but also the focus on a quality teacher education, the focus on what kind of teachers are actually coming to teach those children, what kind of curriculum practices are being translated, and are they being actually localized? Are we using local data for those particular children? And we know how linguistically and ethnically diverse Indonesia is. How do we make sure that we're using the right pedagogies with those particular groups? So all those kind of things. So Indonesia is similar as New Zealand, very complex because very diverse, linguistically, ethnically diverse country. So, one size doesn't fit all. So hopefully I have answered and elaborated on some of those complexities of funding and that kind of, there is no silver bullet, if you like, that will sort of solve everything. But
Thank you so much.
Okay. Thanks, Prof.
Thank you,
Marek
Pak
and
Fasli.
Prof. Fasli. Yeah, thank you. The second question from Ibu Citra Asri.
Okay, thank you so much for opportunity which is given to me. My name is Citra Asri Maulidina from Universitas Negeri Jakarta. Thank you so much, Professor Marek Tesar, for your presentation. It's really wonderful. Okay, I have questions. Actually, I have some experiences, more than 8 years to teach early childhood students. The most challenging is how to connect with parents who just care about their children academic than their children potential. Unfortunately, some play groups in Indonesia concerned to teach early childhood students how academically, how they read, count, write in early age, like 3 or 4 years old. How to approach parents who always force their children to study academically at an early age. I totally agree with your explanations about we must know about children potential. And yeah, I just want to know about that because some parents in Indonesia just focus with their children academic than their children potential, and how to connect with them, how to explain to them in a good way. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ibu Citra. What a wonderful question. And can I just say that this issue, this problem is not only in Indonesia. This is something what we're experiencing almost in every country around the world. This idea of parents pushing their children towards particular demanding that the children gain particular knowledge sets that they will then carry on from early years that are very fragmented and focus on particular subject knowledge or particular what would be called sort of hot skills that sort of should exist is highly problematic. And the question how to, I'm not the best person again to answer that, but I can offer some remarks on that. First is philosophical, because I think what we really talking about here that and you need to understand, we understand that parents are worried and they are really in that kind of particular image of a child, to return to my presentation, but they're really focused on children's futures and really wondering that we need children to establish early on these particular sets of knowledges and skills in order to be successful future in life. And we don't actually mind what's happening around them. We don't care where they are located. But there is a kind of universal set of skills, or for example, language or whatever it is that the sort of child needs to know in order to be successful in life. That belief into child's becoming rather than being, if you like, is very critical here. And that's that all Pritchard's theory of identity that's been translated into new sociology of childhood, that really talks about the notion that most of the adults unwillingly will be really focused on the idea that who the child will become in the future. So we don't necessarily are focused on the child's being present in a given moment. So on the being of a child, we focused on how that knowledge will be useful in the future. Now, they have a point. I'm not going to deny that there are knowledges that we learn that are really important. The trouble is if it becomes this sole purpose and focus on education sector. Because those of you, and you've been a teacher, you said you've been a teacher for years, right? And so you sort of know how when curriculum is created and you write pedagogy is used in early child education setting, the subject knowledge is woven through that everyday practices. No, you won't sit down children around you and will be teaching them A, B, C, D, E, or you will be doing numeracy activities with them, or you will be doing particular science. No, what you will do is you will focus on particular projects, on particular ideas, and all those other knowledges will be woven through that. So the numeracy literacy skills will be gained. So if we are already doing it, what sort of parents expect, it just doesn't happen so visibly, or it doesn't happen in a pace that the parents expect. I would come back to my presentation and say, well, right assessment makes learning visible. So how do we make the learning that the children are making, if we're doing high quality early childhood education and care, the learning needs to be visible. How do we make the learning that the child has visible to parents? That's maybe my first answer to that. And we've been struggling with that and doing that. The second one is, how do we build stronger partnerships with parents and bring them to us and make sure that they actually are part of that community to understand the joy, the fun, the amazing part of how the child learns? Because whether we like it or not, the child learns the best when they have good time. And is it only child? It's also adults. We learn the best when we have a good time, not when we're told to be indoctrinated with particular knowledge or curricula. So those two things, I would say, is the key to answer. Is it easy? Not at all. It's very difficult, sometimes almost impossible. It's an everyday teacher struggle. And as a new parents come, it's again and more. And sometimes it's culturally based. Sometimes it's based around particular idea that's really trendy. I just visited a couple of centers on Monday. So what's Tuesday? It's Tuesday. Yesterday I went, and suddenly the focus is on AI in early childhood, and there is a panic. How do we integrate AI into our learning? So there's always this kind of panic that sort of we're not catching up with the latest developments. And I think we just need to don't panic and slow down and to really understand and focus on what we're doing best as early childhood teachers. We can't expect to be catching up on all latest trends. What we're best at are relationships, building partnerships, being with children and families. And will we make everybody happy? Well, not entirely. But what makes the parents happy? If their child is happy, if they are learning, if they are progressing. So I would come back to that original statement. How do we make learning visible to everybody, to children themselves, to us as teachers, but also to parents and to community and to everybody else. So that would be my response to that. Kia.
Yeah, thank you very much, Prof. Marek. Keep your spirit, Bu Citra.
Thank
Okay, we
you.
still have about 3 or 4 minutes actually. The third question from Ibu Farah Anjani. Silakan.
Thank you, Bu Lara, for the opportunity. I'm Farah from Universitas Negeri Jakarta. Thank you to Professor Marek Tesar for giving us such a insightful presentation. I personally love to learn how the curriculum works in every country. So in Indonesia, there is one challenges that often happened here is how the educators keep up with the curriculum reform that happened frequently here. So I would like to know in the New Zealand how long curriculum reform occurred there, and if it's occurred, what's the common objectives that government has to do the reformation, and how the government introduce or discuss the reformation to all the teachers and other parties that are related to the early childhood education. And in your presentation, you often emphasize that the teachers have to be capable to teach the children. And I would like to know how the government there in New Zealand to make sure that all educators there are capable to teach the children. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ibu Farah. And I have to say that you really giving me a run for my money with these questions. These are very complex and obviously very, very difficult questions to answer. I will focus on one aspect of your. I'm aware of a time, and I will focus. And I think there is a lot. We need to get together again, and as we always say, and discuss some of this further. But I will comment on one thing that you ask, and that is a curriculum reform. And because that is a key, I think that Indonesia has been really struggling with the level of change, and the frequency of change has been happening with curriculum. So the teacher training could never keep up, and the professional development associated with that, with the level of curriculum reform and change. I mean, now there is no critique to that curriculum reform. I think those curriculum reforms were done with the best intentions. I mean, as much as you can critique best intentions, obviously, best intentions doesn't mean the best outcomes. In New Zealand, we took a little bit different approach. We went against all odds. So way before, we had the first curriculum, early child curriculum in the world, in the Western world. There was none others. And part of that was just complete fluke that sort of happened in late 80s, early 90s, in the height of a neoliberalism, sort of fallout from Reagan, Thatcher's era of neoliberal practices. And we were able to create, and suddenly the focus on the child as a sort of economic good and linking it to the future arose from that idea that what can we do for children? And a couple of very smart women, and I purposefully said women educators, thinkers, they got together and they created what's now the Tafariki curriculum. So you're thinking about late 80s, early 90s, the grounding of the same curriculum that we have in 2024, pretty much unchanged from those original thoughts. And the way how it got approved was that they took, and I don't know if you remember, I said it's 1996, but I said it's really 1993, because the whole curriculum took 3 years to consult around the country with every teacher, every stakeholder, every early childhood center got a copy. Everybody had a go. Everybody has part of that partnership. Everybody in New Zealand feels deep ownership to the curriculum, partially because some teachers still now can say, this was my contribution, this was my change to this learning outcome. I have a colleague who was a teacher at the time, and she knows exactly which part of the curriculum is hers. But overall, that understanding that you consult, you're part of that kind of community that responds and go back, and then you take the curriculum on a roadshow and you explain, you listen, you don't talk over the people, and you listen to teachers, you listen to those who will use the curriculum, you listen to those who work with families and with children, and create a curriculum that is timeless. because it works, because it's aspirational, it sets the tone, it creates the idea of what do we shared understanding, who is a child, what is childhood, why we have early childhood education and care, who do we believe the child is, and where the child is going. So all these key things in that document, the hierarchy that I have here, it's really important because, and that's why it stayed the same. And that's why it hasn't been challenged. I don't know a lot of countries in the world, and maybe now they are. In the past, they definitely were not, where there is no critique of a curriculum. So ministry loves the curriculum. Teachers love the curriculum. Parents love the curriculum. Children enjoy it. And even academics, they don't critique it. And when you critique it very carefully and with a lot of what I would call respect. And even if you provide. We had a 30 years of curriculum conference, and I was a keynote there last year. And I offered very gentle critique. And there was one of the original, now retired writer of the hierarchy of the curriculum. And she asked me that perhaps it's time to critique it a little bit more, a little bit stronger. But other people told her, no, we cannot critique it too much because it's our taonga. That's in Maori language, our treasure. It's something that we value. In the height of all those changes, all those things, we maintain our curriculum. The question that I would ask, and that's what I'm asking myself every day as a former teacher, as a scholar, as an academic, is that are we actually ready for such a curriculum document in a country, given the level of funding, given the state of teacher education, given all the other challenges that we have? Because that's the real question. The curriculum is great, but just like you describe in Indonesia, where some things of system that I'm aware of are working, but the curriculum is ever changing. Unless you get all parts of a system together working, it doesn't really matter. It's like having a car built of various pieces, and one is really, really high quality and these others are not. Or it doesn't really make the car great. It just makes that one aspect of the car really good. But overall, the vehicle will struggle to move. And the similar thing is with early childhood education. You need to have all the parts in place. The system is very complex. The funding system is usually very broken for early childhood education. And that's a fundamental issue that we are seeing, that there are some people who are benefiting from early childhood education, but definitely not all. And that's the problem. And that's where we need to put our attention to. So I hope that I have tried to sort of answer at least one thing, but there is obviously so much more that we could discuss, but I know you have a busy schedule ahead of you. And so I think my time is up. Is that right, Ibu Lara?
Yes, Professor Marek. Okay, thank you very much for the inspiring discussion. So Mbak Farah, still keep your spirit. Hopefully we can discuss again in the next occasion. And sadly, we have to end the question and answer session. Thanks again for you all, Professor Marek and audiences that have participated in this session. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you, Professor Marek Tesar, as our keynote speaker today, and Mrs. Lara as the moderator for the session.
Ladies and gentlemen, moving on to next agenda, we will having Associate Professor Nikolai Feresov from Monash University, Australia, as our second keynote speaker. Please welcome Indra Susanto MTesol as the moderator of this seminar today. Mr. Indra, time and place is yours.
Thank you, dear MCs. And once again, on behalf of the committee, let me welcome you once again to the first International Conference for Research in Early Childhood Education 2024. Distinguished guests, honorable keynote speakers, presenters, and all the participants, we would like to continue our second keynote talk today with our next keynote speaker, Associate Professor Dr. Nikolai Feresov from Monash University, Melbourne, Australia. It is an honor for me to be his moderator today. and allow me to read his excellent bio. So Dr. Nikolai Ferisov has the experience as a daycare center and kindergarten teacher and secondary school teacher. And he has got his first PhD degree in Moscow in 1990 and started his academic career in Murmansk, Russia as a senior lecturer and the head of Department of Early Childhood. The second PhD was obtained in the University of Oulu in Finland in 1998. And from 1999 to 2011, he had been affiliated with Kazani Teacher Training Department in Finland as a senior researcher and the scientific director of the International projects. He has published 5 books and over 120 articles or book chapters available in 10 languages. And his area of interest is development in early years, cultural historical theory, and research methodology. Currently, with us today, he will deliver a keynote speech entitled Cultural Historical Genetic Research Methodology, How Can It Inform Research in Education? Dear participants, if you have questions regarding the presentation, if you're joining online, you may type your questions in the chat box or deliver your questions directly later on in the Q&A session. If you attend in person, you may address your questions during the Q&A session as well. Dr. Nikolai, it's so nice to see you. And the next 45 minutes is now yours and will be followed up by a 15 minutes question and answer session.
Oh, thank you. Hello, can you hear me? Can I share the screen?
Yes.
Okay. Can you see my screen shared?
Yes. Yes, we can, Doctor.
Okay, thank you very much. It's my great pleasure to be here with you. And in contrast to Professor Marek, I have never been to Indonesia, unfortunately. But we already started our collaboration because some months ago I made a kind of online course of lectures for PhD students led by Army. And I still think that Indonesian PhD students are great. And what I'm going to present today is in some sense in line with what Marek said, but it will be more focused on the research. And what I'm going to present is a cultural historical research methodology and how this research methodology might be applied to education and specifically to early childhood education, because early childhood education is my field. This is the field I apply this methodology. And what I'm going to tell you is just to share with you some ideas of this methodology, followed by the example of the concrete research with the concrete girl called Eva, which is a pseudonym. You will meet Eva very soon. I had a purpose to select to present to you this case with Eva, because, well, I could do different, but again, you will understand in 5 minutes why Eva is going to be presented today. Well, I'm developing this research methodology for last 10 years, and these are my publications. They all are focused on the genetic research methodology, cultural historical research methodology, which is coming from the tradition of Vygotsky and the generations of the researchers internationally following Vygotsky's line. And I'm not only developing this as a methodology or theoretical level, I'm also trying to apply this to concrete research programs and projects. Unfortunately, in 1 hour and 45 minutes, it's absolutely impossible to present all methodology in detail because it's complex. But what I would love to recommend is that it was completely and detailed presented in these 2 books. The green one, which is on the right, published last year, and the red and blue one on the left is just recently published 2 months ago. In these books, you can see all the methodology, description, and the examples of the research examples of the concrete research, how the methodology works. If there are somebody who is interested in this, then can continue our collaboration. I will be more than happy to come to Indonesia and to teach PhD students how to apply this research methodology as a kind of new way of researching children development. Well, and the idea of this research methodology comes directly from Vygotsky. Vygotsky's definition of the experimental genetic method. What is the experimentations? What is Vygotsky's experimentation? Vygotsky's experimentation is not just making observations of the child, not just making learning stories or whatever, and not collecting and then analyzing the data and then observing how child learns or develops. So the idea of Vygotsky's experimentation is to create the conditions, developmental conditions, which generate the micro-developmental changes just in front of our eyes, and then to observe this development, micro-development, or to record this development, okay, the process, and then analyze this process using theoretical tools as the analytical tools. This is a difference. We are not only observing the child in everyday conditions, we are coming and specially creating the conditions to support child's development, to make developmental process observable and recordable and therefore analyzable. This is very specific for Vygotsky studies. Okay? We are not just observers and registrators. We are participants. Researchers and teachers and parents are participants, facilitators, creating the conditions for child development. And in certain sense, we are not bringing the child to the specially equipped laboratory. We come to daycare centers. We, together with teachers, are working, make an observation of the child, and then building a kind of situation when the child begins to meet challenging tasks and start to develop, to overcome these difficulties. This is the idea. It's not done in a lab. It's done in child's everyday settings. Might be family, might be school, might be early childhood center, might be excursion, whatever. Well, that's the point. And I want to comment the word genetic here. When I say cultural, historical, genetic research methodology, many people immediately understand this as something biological, like genus, like nature, nurture. No. Here, genetic means genesis, which means social, cultural genesis. So all higher psychological functions are coming from social, and development is how social becomes the individual. From here, the importance of collaboration, cooperation, parents' participation, teachers' participation is important, because parents, teachers, and researchers, we all are the social environment for the child, and depending on what kind of social situations we create for the child. So it depends how the child learns and develops. We are not looking at the child as isolated. We are always looking at the child in a specific social situation of interaction with other children, parents, teachers, and researchers. You see, we are a little bit different from the traditional mainstream psychology, which try to, withdraw the researcher from the process, not to interfere with the process. We are not withdrawing ourselves from the process. We are coming and making the process, which is not possible without us. Okay. Well, and looking in general, this research methodology is about child development, and because it's a psychological theory, by child development we mean the process of development of higher psychological functions or higher mental functions of the children, which might include memory, thinking, attention, will, imagination. These are higher psychological functions or higher mental functions, if you like. So, and we have two sorts of tools for analysis. The first are theoretical tools for analysis, which are theoretical concepts, which I will come a little bit later. But we especially select theoretical concepts from our theoretical framework, if we take cultural historical as a framework, and use these concepts to analyze the data. For us, concepts are not just some general ideas or generalizations or abstractions. So we use them as our research tools of analysis. And on the right, we do it through the experiment, as I said, but to make the experiment a real Vygotskian experiment, we need to follow some requirements. We need to create some situations and conditions in which the development might happen, and then through this we support children's development to make it observable, analyzable. Well, I call it experimental tools or principles of research design, which means that we are making a specific research design to support child development, and then look how the development happens, or if it doesn't happen, why. I know what I'm saying is very, very difficult to follow, believe me, and I understand, but I want to just to kind of step by step introduce to you this vision of how to make the research to support development. Well, and my last difficult slide is the list of principles of the research design. These are 5 principles of the research design. We, depending on our research question, when we do research design, when we create conditions for the child, we select certain principles. Very, very seldom it's absolutely exclusive when we can do all 5 principles in one research. And this is the case which I'm going to discuss with you. You see, there are 5 principles. I don't want to read all of them because I will show now how these principles might be applied and what results they might bring. And I promised you to introduce the goal. We did the research with, not on, but with. But before I do this, I want to introduce my colleagues, Dr. Marie Hammer and Dr. Victoria Minson. We were 3 participants, 3 co-authors of this research of the case, and which I'm going to present. And you see the links here and some references to published materials. If you want to know more, please welcome. They are free. They are free access. If you cannot, so just let me know and I'll send you. Well, we will start with the first principle, which sounds very strangely. Which sounds the principle of the bars of development. The principle of the bars of development. What is this bars of development? It might sound very strange for mainstream psychologists, but let's see how it works in this. So now time to introduce to you the girl named Eva, which is pseudonym. And of course I have a consent from Eva's parent to show her face. And here Eva is in a very, very confusing situation. She was invited to make a show and tell. I'm not sure in Indonesia, are you using the show and tell practices when the child is invited to bring something from home and tell a story? Show this something and tell a story. Tell me, are you practicing this in Indonesia? Hey?
I think that is something that we don't usually do.
Okay, you can easily imagine that the point is that the children are invited to bring a toy or something from home, and in front of the group of children, just show this. It might be a toy or something, and tell a short story about this. Okay, well, it's a kind of quite typical and traditional experience. And you see, Eva is very confused about. She did bring the monkey from home, but she couldn't tell a story about the monkey. Confusing. She was just trying to move the monkey behind the head. So she was very confused. And we researchers, we were observing this situation. And if you see this situation like this, and if you want to help Eva, what you should do? First of all, you should ask the question, what's the reason of that? What might be the problem here? And the problem, for example, might be in speech development, or problem with Eve's memory, or communication problems, or even intellectual delays. So you can invite 5 psychologists, and they will come, and each of them will give different diagnoses. Somebody will tell you it's about speech, somebody will tell you it's about memory, somebody might tell you, oh, it might be communication problem, or whatever. Well, you still feel a little bit of confused yourself about this. But as cultural historical psychologists, we ask the question which is different. We ask the question which comes from the first principle, which is the principle, if you remember, it's a principle of bards of development. This one, okay? So what does it mean? It means that at every age, at every stage, every child, or even every adult, we have some psychological functions which are very well developed. At the same time, we have some psychological functions which are just beginning their development. They are like on embryonic stage. For example, if you take children at age of 5 or 6, we can see that they have quite well-developed memory, but not well-developed conceptual thinking. So they are not able to think abstractly. They mostly think using their everyday concepts. So, which means that at the same time, there are higher psychological functions which are developed in the form of the fruit, and some functions which are at the level of the bud. Of course, it's a metaphor. Bud is not a physical bud, but I'm just using Vygotsky's metaphor. Buds of development are just embryonic. And the point is that if I want to develop, if I want to fertilize, if I want to support developing buds into fruits, I need first to understand where are the buds? Where are the buds of development? Where are the buds which will be the flowers of development of the child within the child? And you might say that it's very strange, but the answer is very clear. The buds of development are not in the child, not in the child's mind. The buds of development are in a sphere of interaction, interrelation of the child with others. So before becoming the child's individual higher psychological functions, they exist in the form of social interaction, collaboration with others. And this principle helped us to understand where is the real problem of the Eve. And we decided to look on Eve not during this concrete situation, but to look on social environment, social situation of Eve, including her history. And do you know what we discovered when we were trying to analyze the life of Eve? We've noticed that she is 4 years old, but 3 years of her life she lived in Jakarta. By the way, that was the reason I selected Eve to present to you. Okay, and 1 year of her life she lived in Japan, and she just started to live in Australia, and she is very developed girl because she could tell stories about her home, her life, about Jakarta, about her sister, the library, culture. Well, she has a great sense of humor, very good dancer. So she knows a lot of things about history, voyagers, hula girls, Bali, Union Jack, Pompeii, and everything. Wow, that's an indication of a very well developed girl. Why then she could not complete this simple task? Yeah, the principle of paths of development helps us to understand, and the principle helps us to understand that Eve is very good in storytelling only in a situation of a dialogue. When there is somebody interacting, communicating with her, she is great. She can build lots of stories, but she needs a dialogue. So the bards are here. She can tell stories building together, but when the task is to build the story herself, so bards are not enough. Okay, so and with this, and that's helped us to understand what might be the way to help Eve to change these buds of development into the flowers and then into the fruits. This is how the first principle works. And this principle means that before you start your research, you have to identify which high psychological functions you want to develop and are there any buds and where are the buds? So, okay, and I have to be very quick, then I will come to the next principle, which also sounds very strange, the principle of drama. Oh, drama. No, I'm not saying tragedy, I'm saying drama. For many people, drama is something bad, but dialectically, drama is a contradiction, but dialectical contradictions are the moving forces for development. So drama itself might be a danger, but drama might be an opportunity, depending how it is resolved, depending how much support. So we could, the point is that we should find any dramatic events in the life of the child, and then based on that, trying to create the developmental conditions, help the child to overcome the drama. And definitely that was the first drama of Eve. And it was quite obvious. She really felt disappointed about that. And the drama was found. And the next step was just to find the ways how to help Eve to overcome this drama. What might be the tools which might help her to do this? So principle of interaction of ideal and primary forms is helping us to understand this. So this is the quotation from recently translated Vygotsky's text about ideal and present form. If you're okay, I can give you 2-3 minutes to read. I'm sorry, I'm still experiencing some consequences of my COVID. I need 2-3 minutes of break. You see from here that from the very first day of the life of the child, the mom speaks to the child, developing, using developed form of speech. Of course, very simple, but still, and the child's speech development is not possible when the child is not in a situation when somebody talks to the child. Imagine the child left alone and nobody speaks to the child. We cannot expect that the child's speech will develop. So the only condition for developing the speech is the interaction of mom's developed form of speech. So ideal forms are developed forms of something which exist in a culture, which interact with the child's real forms, which creates a kind of tension between the higher level and lower level. It's a kind of zone of proximal development. And our task was to find a kind of ideal form for Eve to interact with, to start developing her ability to tell the story independently. That was a task we tried to find, but we could not. But what happened is that Eve herself, this girl herself, did find the ideal form for her, ideal form for storytelling. Once in the morning, she came to the center with mom, and mom said, "Oh, we were in the car coming to the center, and in the radio, it was a kind of story told. The dictator told a story about three little pigs, and Eve was listening so attentively. She was so fascinated about this story. She didn't know this story before, and she said, 'Wow, what a story!' And when they arrived, she tried to tell the story to the teacher, but she could not. So, and we decided that, okay, ability to tell the story about three little pigs from the very beginning to the very end might be a good ideal form to Eve. And our job was to create the conditions which might help Eve to be able to tell the story of three little pigs and many other stories like this independently in front of the people without any interruption and without any help. But what was difficult is that, you see, I'm pretty sure you know the story, fairy tale, Three Little Pigs. Do you?
Yes, we do.
Okay, thank you. So, and you see, there are, it's quite a complex story for 4 years ago, right? There are 4 characters, 3 little pigs and the wolf, and 3 houses, and the materials the houses were built, and how long it took to build the house, and how easy it was to build the house, and then the words of the characters, like a little pig, let me in, and the answers of the pigs, not by hair, when chinny chin chin, I will not let you in, and then the wolf repeats, huff and puff and your house down, and then the actions and the results and circumstances. It's quite a complex scenario, and it requires ability to keep all this in mind, in memory, the whole story. It requires a speech development. It requires a logic. It requires a memory. So it's a kind of complex ability. Well, and to support Eve to reach this level, we created some conditions for her. And these conditions are related to the principle number 4, which is called principle of developmental tools. Developmental tools are certain tools, certain signs, cultural signs and tools we suggest to the subject, first as an external, and while using these tools, they are internalized, they are becoming internal tools, and from external regulation of the activity, it becomes the internal regulators of the activity, which will help Eve to organize her mental structures internally and be able to keep this all information in mind. And the first, I just want to comment about that. So what does it mean, these tools? The easiest example is counting. We all teach children how to count, and quite often we teach children how to count using fingers, yeah? Like pointing 1, 2, 3, 4, or just 1, 2, 3, 4, or as the Russians do, 1, 2, 3, 4. They are using fingers as external tools. But in a very short period of time, we notice that the children are not using fingers anymore. They are counting without any fingers. They are counting just knocking, which means that their external tools are becoming internal. And very often we adults can use our internal tools to remember things which we cannot remember without. Yeah. So this is my example. Do you know what this is? Hey, do you know what this is? This comes from mathematics. This is a pi. And this is the way how to remember all the digits. If I want to remember what comes after 3.14, I only need to remember, may I have a large container of coffee, which means may 3, 1, I 1, have 4, air, and so on. So this is my internal tool to help not to forget the sequence of numbers in the pi number. Well, and what we did for Eve, we introduced the play, and we introduced a different story, not the story of the pigs. It was a story Eve did together with other children and with a teacher, and it was a 5 little ducklings adventure. They created the story. There are 5 little ducklings. They came to the zoo, and then their mom was waiting for them, and they had an adventure, and then they disappeared, and then it was danger because of the tiger. A lot of things. So they were. But the point is that using this story, they were using the tools. They were using the small, how to say, these puppets. And then we made the next step. We took the real puppets and then we tried again to ask Eve to tell a story about 3 little pigs, and you see the results. So she was not very confident about telling the story, and in a dialogue she could. You see, when she had questions, she could follow the story a little bit, but when we stopped asking questions, she still could not continue the story, because she had no enough internal resources to keep the story in her mind. And then when we decided to continue, and we changed the signs, we took away the puppets, and instead of puppets, we put a kind of modulo. Modulo is an abstract constructions which might be used as a real participants or kind of heroes or characters. Well, telling little stories about that using these. And it really did help, because at a certain period of time, what happened is that Eve began to be able to tell long stories without using any external tools. You see here, highlighted in red, how long sentences Eve could produce with the very minimal help of the teacher. Yeah, teacher asks only 4 small questions, and Eve gives us very extended answer. Well, and why it happened? It happened because we created the conditions for Eve. We created internal tools using which she could organize her storytelling experience, keeping the story. And then at the end, we made a kind of provocation. We invited a teacher from another group, and again we invited Eve to tell a story about 3 little pigs to all the children. But the teacher task was to interrupt Eve and provocate Eve to change the scenario. For example, in classical scenario, they built one house first, and then it was destroyed by the wolf, and then the second house. But the idea was, or the teacher was just to say that they start to build the houses at the same time. So the task of the teacher was to try to contradict Eve's story, to provocate Eve, and checking is Eve still keep telling the story in the correct way. And the result is here. So despite any provocation, Eve continued to tell the story the way it should be told. Okay, and what we did at the last moment, we did what we call the principle of sustainable results, which means that if the changes in child's development is sustainable change, if it's real change, real developmental change, it should remain for a very long time, because the risk is that in our experimental situation we can create the conditions that child can learn something very quickly. But if this is not a sustainable change, these changes the child learns quickly might disappear in a month, because it's too high level for the child. It does not correspond to real level of development. So the principle of sustainable results means that we come to the child again in a month, and then again in 3 months, and we create the same situation. We ask the same task. We came in a month, and we didn't want Eve to tell us a story about 3 little pigs. We wanted her to tell a story about something with her monkey. Again, show and tell. And you cannot imagine how long the story about the monkey was. The Eve was able to speak about 15 minutes. 4 years old girl speaking about 15 minutes about the story of the monkey without any questions from the teacher, absolutely independently, absolutely being regulated internally, and keeping the story and telling the story logically step by step. So that was the indication that what we did for Eve were really bring developmental results, and these results remain forever. And Eve is able not only to tell a story about 3 little pigs, Eve is now at the level of development, which helps her to tell the stories, the quite complex stories, as complex as the 3 little pigs stories. Well, and therefore, we decided that, okay, now our experimentation is done. We never say that we finish the experiment unless we are sure that these changes which happened in child's mind, they remain. Okay, so the child is now what was on the potential development on the child become the child's actual development, which relates to the idea of ZPD of Vygotsky. This is a very, very superficial, very short story about only one research we did, but I wanted you just to kind of feel, to have a flavor about that, how the research might be done to support children's development, and how this methodology, which is called cultural historical genetic research methodology, works, and how these 5 principles of experimental design might be applied, and what results we can obtain. And I think my time is over, and thank you very much for your attention. And sorry, as I said, I'm still feeling a little bit COVID affected. So now I want to say again, thank you very much for the opportunity.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Nikolai, for the very fruitful presentation, and allow me to represent everyone here to wish you have a speedy recovery from the COVID effect.
Yeah.
So also, I would like to read a bit of the summary of what you have presented to us today. So Dr. Nikolai has talked about the research methodology of DRM, where we explore where it is origins from Vygotsky's work and its potential application in educational research, which emphasizes the social nature of learning and the importance of active engagement in the learning process. And it also details 5 principles guiding DRM research, which are paths of development, drama, interaction of ideal and real forms, developmental tools, and sustainable results. And also in the presentation, we have seen a case study involving a child named Eve, And by analyzing Eve's interactions and response during a show and tell activity, we can identify potential areas for development such as speech, memory, and also communication. Yep. And this presentation provides examples of how developmental tools can be introduced and utilized in educational settings to support children's learning and development. And it has been a comprehensive overview of how cultural historical genetic research methodology and its potential applications in educational research. So once again, thank you so much for sharing such a fruitful insights for us here, Dr. Nikolai. So now we would like to welcome questions from the Oh, sorry, I think there was a connection problem with my Zoom. And hello. Okay, once again, sorry for the connection problem. So that was the presentation from Dr. Nikolai, and it has been giving us a great insights on how we can apply GRIM research method in early childhood settings. And now we would like to welcome questions from the participants. So if there are questions, you may raise your hand and I will give you the chance to address the questions to Dr. Nikolai. Okay, for the first question, let me welcome Miss Eka Yunita. Miss, you may address your question to Dr. Nikolai now. And don't forget to introduce yourself and also your affiliation.
Let me introduce myself. My name is Eka Yunita. I want to ask about the storytelling. How many minutes we can tell or we can give a storytelling to the children? Is it unlimited minutes or it's maybe good in 5 or 10 minutes? Thank you.
Hey, thank you, Miss, for the questions. Dr.
Okay,
Nikolai,
so
you may...
yeah, so well, if I understand your question correctly, you are speaking about the show and tell during show and tell, or you're speaking about the specific child Eve. Because usually for show and tell, it depends on the age of the children. We start practicing this in Australia. In Australia, we start practicing these from the age 3 till age 5 before they go to prep. To prep, and it depends on the child. It depends on the story. So there is no like a criteria of time. For example, if the child cannot tell more than 5 minutes, something goes wrong. It's not about that. It's about just it's a kind of experience of children to be able to tell stories to each other using the toys and something like that. It's more for like educational purposes rather than psychological development. It's about show and tell, depending on the child, depending on the story, depending on the toy, depending on the age. So there are no time limits and there are no time requirements. But in case of Eve and other children, because Eve was not only child we was working with, so depending on their specific experimental conditions we create, what our expectations were, that the child should be able to tell the whole story, without any support, from the very beginning to the end. And it's very easy to check. If you can find the book, Three Little Pigs, if you read slowly, you will see how many minutes it will take. So usually it's about 12-15 minutes. And it's for the child of this age, it's quite an achievement, by the way. But this achievement was because we created the conditions for that, which means that in principle, every child at this age is able to reach this level. The only point is that how we support the child. Do we have instruments and proper instruments or tools which might help children to move to this high level of development, which is the idea of experimental genetic method of Vygotsky. Just during the experiment, we create the conditions for development and we organize the development, and development begins to happen, okay? And we can then step by step make a record of this development, collect the data, and then analyze the data. But if something goes wrong, we just change the condition. For example, we can change the ideal form, or we can change the tools, or we can change the dramatic collision. So we have the same situation as any other experimenters. For example, in physics, if the experimenters in physics need some effect, they change the condition. They change the condition of the physical experiment, and until the effect they want begins to happen. We are doing the same. And we're not thinking about in terms of time, how much time it will take. We are thinking about, is the child able to tell the whole story, fairy tale or other kind of story, very complex story, very logical story, with several characters, with several actions, with words, with several repetitions independently, being able to keep the whole story in mind all the time during telling the stories to others. And what we do, we create a social situation, social conditions, because we know that development comes from social to individual. And therefore, our role as teachers and parents and researchers are very important. It's very important because we are those people who come to the child, start to build the conditions for the child, not to dictate, not to teach the child that, oh, you should remember this story, okay, first rules, and then, no, we never do this. We're just doing this by a different way. We are just providing the child's internal tools to be able to tell this story. Instead of drilling, instead of repeating the story 1 million times, we are creating the conditions for the child to be able to tell the story independently. And time here is not absolutely important point. What is important is the ability to tell the story without mistakes or with minimal mistakes, independently, individually, which is the point, which shows that the children can do this, but the only thing is that they need the support. Okay. Sorry, I know I didn't answer your question, but but this is my answer.
Yeah. Thank you, Doctor. So it's not based on the time, but it is based on how the child can tell the story. Okay.
Yeah.
I hope that summarizes the answer
Yeah.
for Miss Chitra. Okay, now we would like to welcome the next question. You may raise your hand.
Okay, thank you
Okay,
so much for the opportunity.
Miss Chitra, thank you.
Yes. Okay. Thank you so much for opportunity which is given to me, associate professor. Sorry. My name is Citra Sri Maulidina from Universitas Negeri Jakarta. Actually, I have a questions. How do you think about an inclusive education based on your methodology? Because some parents who have children with special needs, especially, they are sometimes denial to accept their children condition, actually, and then sometimes they don't want to much care about their children progress or development. So how do you think about that? Thank you.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Thank you. That's an interesting question. of course, I can share what I think, but as we are researchers and professionals, I don't have any experimental evidence, or we did not do anything experimentally, and therefore I have no data. And once I have no data, I cannot answer this. So it seems to me, my personal opinion is, it seems to me that it might be very helpful in being applied to the special education. But unfortunately, I do not have any experimental data about that. But if we do it together, I will be more than happy.
Okay, thank you so much. Because actually, I have some experiences about how to connect with parents who have children with special needs. It's actually it's not easy, and also they don't care about their children ability, progress, or something, and it's not really easy to make a connect with them, and they don't care about their children at home actually. So yeah, maybe one day we can have like research together.
Oh,
Uh, so
yeah.
yeah, thank
Absolutely.
you.
Absolutely. Well, I'm more than happy to come and share this methodology, not in this form, because I had only 45 minutes. It's nothing, just a kind of make a kind of professional development of special series of lectures and seminars and workshops, just to bring all the details, just to equip, and then we can do, no problem.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Mbak Citra, and also Dr. Nikolai. Due to the time limitation, we would welcome the last question, and it will be from Miss Inka. I saw you raised your hand earlier. Would you like to address your question?
Yeah.
Okay, one last question. Or we have a question in the chat box, Doctor. It's how the role play for early childhood in kindergarten in Australia. So the question is for Australian context. What are the stages of the role playing in Australia?
Oh, this is a good question, and it's it seems to me that this question is coming out of the topic I wanted to I presented, and I'm not sure I can give a short answer to this question. Well, what I can say in general is that look, I'm a psychologist, I'm a researcher. Okay, I'm doing a research. I'm not as much involved in everyday educational practices in Australia. So we come to the centers with my colleagues and my co-researchers, and we work with children. And of course, we know that role play is important. Of course, we know that play is a leading activity for child development. So you better ask this question to our teachers, because they are practical workers. My field is research, and what I presented is the approach to research I'm trying to apply, and that's the answer. I'm sorry again, I'm not answering your question, but
yeah, so maybe different fields.
No, it's not my field. I'm afraid to mislead you.
Yeah, that's okay. All right. So there's another one. How can local wisdom and traditional practices can be integrated to create an inclusive home environment for children?
How can local wisdom and traditional practices be integrated to create an inclusive home environment for children? So there's a country the groups. Well, Indonesia is very culturally diverse country. And likely Australia is also a very culturally diverse country. It's quite typical, quite normal in Australia if you go to the every daycare center in Melbourne, for example. You will find very interesting picture. You will see a group of teachers, very culturally and nationally diverse teachers. There might be teachers having 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 different cultural national backgrounds. And if you look at the children, you will see that the children are from different cultural and national and religious backgrounds. Sometimes in some centers in Melbourne, the Australian teachers and Australian children are minority. The majority of teachers and children are from different countries. They might be Indonesia, China, Turkey, Greece, Russia, whatever. So that's a kind of reality. So, and we have a great history of culturally diverse education, cultural diverse elements. Well, Australia might be proud about that because it's normal. It's like normal everyday situation. We have no challenge how to incorporate cultural diverse things into the curriculum. The problem is that it's already incorporated. Huh? That's the point is that how we can just improve this. Okay.
Okay.
Oh, one more.
Thank
I think
you,
there's
Professor,
one.
for the answer.
Okay.
One more. I think
Yeah,
it's
and
still the part of
there
the
is a
same
question. Yes.
So,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. There is one.
One more. Okay.
No, it's a kind of private. It's about my email. Well, it's easy. So you can easily contact the organizers if you want to contact me, and also on the very first page of my presentation there is my email. And if you are interested to take this presentation, I can send. Oh, I have already sent it to the organizers. So it is here, right? Oh,
yeah.
Yep.
You can see your email address in the first page. Okay.
Thank you. I think my time is over.
Yeah.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Dr. Nikolai. And that was the last question, and that would conclude the question and answer session as well. So once again, Dr. Nikolai, we thank you so much for your sharing today with us and for your keynote speech. And I'm sure that we all have learned a lot, and we have widened our lens on looking at how we can do research on early childhood education settings using the methodology that you have shared before. So now I would like to give back the session to the MC. So MC, now time is yours.
Thank you, Professor Nikolai Feresov as our keynote speaker today, and Mr. Indra as the moderator for this session.
Thank you for listening, and thank you, Indra, for fantastic moderation.
Thank you.
And I hope we stay in touch. Thank you.
On to the next agenda, we will having Professor Dr. Yuliani Nurani MPD from Universitas Negeri Jakarta as our third keynote speaker today. Please welcome Mrs. Yulia Hidayati, SPD MED, as a moderator of this session today. Mrs. Yulia, please, you may begin.
Thank you, our beautiful Master of Ceremony. Thanks a lot. And good morning, everyone. Welcome again to the first International Conference for Research in Early Child Education. I hope my voice is pretty much clear for all of you because we are, separated by distance. Okay, as mentioned earlier, we are very excited to have participants from various parts of the world of early childhood education joining us today. My name is Yulia, and I'll be delighted to be your moderator for this third session. Okay, it is my pleasure actually to introduce our next speaker, Ibu Profesor Dr. Juliani Nurani, MPD from State University of Jakarta. But please let me share a brief sharing. I'm going to share a screen sharing, please, if you don't mind. Committer, I'm going to do a share screen. Yes, lovely. I can do it now. Right. Okay. Yeah. Well, you guys already see how our next speaker appearing very beautifully in the screen. I'm happy to share her extensive experience in the ECE field. Professor Dr. Juliani Nurani MPD graduated from State University of Jakarta from her bachelor degree of educational psychology and continue into her master degree of educational technology, and finally her doctorate in early childhood education. I think by the long time she spent in State University of Jakarta, her love to the university is unquestionable, right, Ibu Prof? And then in the last 5 years, her extensive research which also being published in numerous academic journals, from the development of play-based curriculum, disaster mitigation, to early years, life skills in the early years, learning evaluation, and digital media for early child education, and many other related issues. And last, she also received some awards from the Ministry, from Indonesian Ministry of Law and Human Rights for a series of intellectual property rights of books and studies in the field of early childhood education. And today, she will discuss the issue of innovation in early childhood education learning in Indonesia. And the presentation, I think, will last for around 30 minutes and will be continued 15 minutes for the Q&A session. Before we begin, I think we need to give a very cheerful applause for Ibu Professor Juliani Nurani, because I think some of you or many of you already know her well. And now, Ibu Profesor Dr. Juliani Nurani, please, Ibu, time is yours.
Thank you to the lovely moderator, Mbak Hilda Hidayati. How are you, Mbak?
I'm good, Ibu. To be honest, a little bit nervous to be your moderator, but I hope everything's good. Thank you, Ibu
Yes.
Prof. Now time is yours, Ibu.
Okay.
Okay, thank you so
Yes.
much.
Okay. First, I will give point to all participants. Naik andong ke Pasar Jaya. Tidak lupa beli kebaya. Belajarlah di Universitas Negeri Jakarta. Suatu hari pasti berjaya. Can I give one more point in English? Okay. Everyone will be mature, but not everyone will be full. Hold the ticket of the future. Your ticket are at school. Okay. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. In the name of Allah, the most gracious and merciful. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good morning and welcome to all participants in this seminar. It's great to see you all here today. I appreciate your time and attention in Zoom meeting. My name is Juliani from State University of Jakarta. Today, I will share with you about innovation in early childhood education, learning with digital media, realizing the golden generation of Indonesian children in 2045. The first, we talk about Indonesia or our countries. Indonesia is the world's 14th largest country and the largest archipelago. As an archipelago, the unitary state of the Republic Indonesia include approximately 17,508 islands. Some of the benefit of Indonesia as an archipelago include the availability of natural resources and maritime wealth, the availability of numerous areas to reside for the human population, and then a richness of resources ranging from plants to exotic animals. Now we talk about Bhinneka Tunggal Ika is a diversity. Indonesia multicultural society is reflective in a wide range of ethnicities, languages, customs, religion, race, and social cultural groups, as well as their respective specialities. Children should be introduced to society abundance and diversity. In Indonesia, we call Bhinneka Tunggal Ika as well as its distinctiveness. This diversity is part of the environment in which children interact and learn. The environment influences the growth and talents of early infancy. Let's try to link with Yuri Brenner ecological theory. Indonesia society has advanced in resulting in a wealth of different local wisdom values. The macro system in the ecological system include these local wisdom values. To face global difficulties, everyone must have life skill. This life skill should begin at a young age and involve the roles of various parties, such as government institutions as part of the macro system. Educational institution is their school system as part of the ecosystem. Teacher has a microsystem, and the last but not least, the family, particularly the involvement of parents as the first and primary source of education for children. Furthermore, the term mesosystem refers to the relation and interaction that occur among the numerous microsystems in an individual's life. This comprise interpersonal ties among family members, instructor, peers, and other social groups. This level of Brenner ecological model emphasizes the necessity of understanding how different microsystems interact to influence an individual development. To ensure that children receive the most positive impact from the interaction that occur in these various systems, particularly between teachers and children, it is necessity to have a medium that acts as a bridge between children and teacher, introduction local wisdom values that children can internalize their daily life. Now we talk about life skill is in a multicultural society. And exposure to Indonesia variety will influence how children behave and struggle in a multicultural society. A multicultural society will have an impact on variances in habit or life behaviors. Life skill can help an individual satisfy the expectation and demands of modern society. Individuals will compete with basic necessity. This tournament will test a variety of abilities and skill, both of survival and problem solving. And then this is a field and community employment opportunities. Life skills are significant because they related to a person's capacities to compete the industrial period and emerge victorious when faced with adversity. According to the Bappenas data for 2021, the high open unemployment rate remains the most pressing issue for young employment in Indonesia. The TPT rate reached 15.23% in 2020, according to the August 2020 National Labor Force Survey. The TPT rose from 13.3% in 1919 due to activity constraint and layoff during the epidemic. This condition also lead to increase in informal employment among young people. However, let's look at the state of SGA in Indonesia. The gross enrollment rate of children attending SGA in Indonesia is decreased. 14.86 teachers have been certified, but 85.14% have not been certified. Education can provide higher quality human resources, hence enhancing people's level of living. The achievement of educational goal is inextricably linked to the numerous of educational components that comprise it. Government policies, instruction competence, student abilities, community support, and the availability of facilities and infrastructure all contribute to this. Educator competence is one of the factors that influence and then the production of the excellent education and the preparation of graduates who can contribution to national building. Now we talk about early childhood aspiration in Indonesia. Indonesian Children of Hope, Golden Indonesian Children. The ideal of early childhood education in Indonesia is Indonesian children's hope for golden Indonesian children. Character education, sustainable development goals, Pancasila student profile, and the direction of ICA development are all strengthening in the achievement of the ideal of ICA in Indonesia, and refer to the achievement of the golden generation 2045 by providing life skill and contain character values given from an early age. A resilient Indonesia, early childhood growth. In addition, the achievement of the golden generation will be something that will be realized, I hope. We hope, yeah? Okay. And then learning for early childhood. In effort to realize a generation that it is intelligent and has character as Indonesians' golden generation, that is smart and can accept change. This must be prepared from an early age. This means that ACA will be part of the preparation of the golden generation, which has comprehensive intelligence, productive and innovative, peaceful in its social interaction, strong, health, good interaction, and superior civilization. Now about the learning technology and early childhood. Technology development that are developing can be used to support early childhood learning activities. The position of technology in this case can be innovative media in the form of digital. Media in the context of learning will be able to bridge the ability for early childhood who are not able to think abstractly and will avoid children from verbalism. Innovative media must be in accordance with the challenge of the industrial era that is starting to move from 4.0 to industrial era 5.0, so that they must be able to take advantage of the development of digital technology that is right on target and appropriate. Digital media can be applied to early childhood, include digital storybook and learning videos, learning activities for early childhood today need to be prepared for children in the digital era. Now this is about research map. The roadmap of my research on development of digital media start from 2012-2014, namely development of center-based play media and learning. And then in 2016 until 2019, research on the development of center event and character-based thematic learning, 18 until 20 of teaching skill models. In 2022, research on the development of a life skill curriculum, model design, and digital play media based on local wisdom. The resulting output are life skill curriculum models, 36 digital media, 37 IPL, ISBN textbook, and publication in international proceeding and journal. The last year, in 2023, research on the development of an early childhood character education model based on local wisdom. Now, we talk about life skill and character in early childhood. According to the UNICEF, life skill are behavior change or behavior development approach designed to address balance of 3 areas: knowledge, attitude, and skill. Of the 10 types of life skill described by UNICEF, UNESCO, and WHO, there are 5 types of life skill that are important to early childhood to master, including self-awareness and or personal skill, and social skill, thinking skill, academic skill, and vocational skill. In order for early childhood to have life skill, in immediate response from the socially responsible education system is needed. This responsibility in the field of education can be realized through the provision of stimulation regarding life skills that are integrated into the curriculum and play program in ACA. Now, life skill learning loaded with local wisdom childhood. One of the result of research I conduct, I found that life skill in early childhood will be maximized if it involves elements of local wisdom. Local wisdom is part of the child's immediate environment so that it is more contextual. This is a very consistent with the concept of early childhood learning, which starts from the child close environment. Local wisdom can be an umbrella for education that leads to early childhood life skill. Life skill provide with the right strategy, namely involving media that contain local wisdom value, certainly affect the development of children in preparing for their future with the ability to help themselves solve problems and be ready to face their own challenge. This is a life skill curriculum early childhood models. Life skills have a positive impact on children live now and in the future. The development of early childhood life skill will be maximized if well prepared through a curriculum that is easy to implement. Aspects of the early childhood life skill curriculum include self-help skill and social skill. Self-help skills are related to how children can be themselves with their basic needs, such as dressing, eating, and learning themselves or grooming. Meanwhile, social skills are related to children interaction and ability to adapt to their environment, such as making friends, sharing and helping, and good manners in get along. The following is the conceptual framework of the early childhood life skill curriculum that my team and I development. Now let's get acquainted with AIMA figures. They are the ones of represent Indonesian children from several provinces in Indonesia. There are Kori, Vidi, Putri, Bagus, Indonesia, and Raya. And then this figure will continue to grow. Now about Tastar Aima Kapaut. Outside of studies, I create the smart bag or Tastar, Tas Pintar Aima Kapaut to teach life skill based on local wisdom. The Aima Kapaut, Tastar Aima Kapaut is a learning media that contain digital-based children story, book, and learning CDs in accordance with the letter of the Minister Education, blah, 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 to be used as a learning media in early childhood institution. The medium was created using native Indonesian wisdom and present stories about various parts of early children life skill, particularly self-help and social skill. Let's watch the following video about Pastor. Sorry. Is it possible? Visible? Sorry.
Not yet, Bu.
Mbak Yulia? Mbak Yulia?
Yeah, hello, Ibu Prof. I'm so sorry, but the link is not working. Are you going to replay it again or?
Gimana lagi?
Yeah, Ibu
Sorry.
Prof. Okay. Do you want to finish
Sorry,
to do
sorry.
the share? Okay, that's okay, Ibu Prof. Do you want to finish your presentation? Because I believe there are some slides left. Thank you.
Sorry. Share screen belum di share screen.
Yeah.
Okay.
Excuse me, Ibu Prof. Could you please do a share screen again? Or oh yeah, it's now. Yeah, it's working. It's working. Yeah, hello Ibu Prof. I'm pretty sure that you successfully play the link, but I think it's not really clearly appear on the screen, Ibu. Do you want to repeat again, please? Maybe one of the committees, can help Ibu Prof to do the share screen and show off the medium of the AIMA PAUD, because that will be interesting, I believe. Thank you.
But Yulia, unfortunately, I think
Yes.
we found some errors, and then
Okay.
about the link, and our apology with the presentation.
Okay, no worries, Ibu Ami. Thank you for that notification. And Ibu Prof, I think you still have some slides to be presented to finish your presentation. The time is still yours, Ibu. Please, thank you. Yeah, yeah, it's appearing. Thank you, Ibu.
Itu yang harus itu ya. Itu yang harus di share screen. Minta dulu apa? Enggak, nanti dulu stop dulu. Stop. Wait a minute, please.
Yeah, that's okay, Ibu Prof. I think for the participants, you can start to have some question and doing writing on the chat box if you have some question for Ibu Prof. And we will
Because this is a special product from our research.
Yes, Ibu, and we will be delightful to see it actually. Thank you. Okay, for the participants that already have a question for Ibu Prof, and we will be connect after the presentation, please start to do writing on the chat box. Thank you. And Ibu Prof, the time is still yours. I believe you still have some slides to present. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, I will continue about our slide. This is about smart digital-based character education curriculum. In addition to developing a life skill model, another research that my team and conducted was developing digital play media for early childhood based on local wisdom in its region. Digital play media is one of the effort to provide continuous stimulation for early childhood during the COVID-19 pandemic, paced by all citizens of the world, which has a major impact on the world education. And then this is about digital media in early childhood education must be able to answer the challenge of how to integrate it, the concept of play in the use digital media. The advantage of using digital media in early childhood learning is that this media can be accessed and used by teachers in learning activities in early childhood education, but it can also be used by parents at the home in stimulating child development. Thus, there is a unity and continuity of stimulation provided by teacher and parent at home. This is a development of smart digital-based character education curriculum model. The early childhood character learning model based on local wisdom through the play center event was developed based on the following character, and then the early childhood character learning model based on local wisdom through the implementation of main center ESM is a learning system consistent of 5 learning components. And then the following is the concept framework of the children character learning conceptual based on Indonesian local wisdom that my team and development. Ini bisa siapkan itu biar ditayangkan dari ini. Okay. The following are the form of research product that I have produced. And then this is a publication of article that have done in international of national journal. And then the development of the second years by making the development of smart digital for early childhood character stimulation media based on local Indonesian wisdom by designing Rumah Digital AIMA in the form of a website that can be accessed by early childhood education editors, parents, and community. And then this is development of smart learning in early childhood education in 2024-2025. The following is a temporary view of smart learning in ACA that I will develop in 2040-25. I hope that this smart learning will later reach out and help teacher in utilizing digital media for the development of life skill and early childhood character education. Finally, we talk about why smart digital learning, because learning customizing, engagement and motivation, holistic learning, 21st century skill development, collaborative learning. And then how to apply Tastar AIMA Kapaut Smart Digital Learning, use an integrated learning platform, integrated curriculum, interactive multimedia content, collaborative between student and teacher, personalizing of learning, evaluation, and monitoring. Finally, the conclusion, to conclusion, life skill
Recording in progress.
Good will be maximized if it involves elements of local wisdom. Local wisdom is part of the child immediate environment so that it's more contextual. And 2, digital media in the context of early childhood. Education is a medium in achieving learning goals in fun way. To close this presentation, I would like to say thank of all you. And finally, I invite the participant to visit the YouTube channel AIMA Kapau. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ibu Profesor Dr. Yuliani Nurani, for your beautiful, amazing, and insightful contribution through your presentation, Ibu. And please, I know some of you already curious about what are actually behind AIMA's Tastar atau Tas Pintar, okay, Ibu? So please, just like what Ibu Prof mentioned, visit her social media just to find out what's best as one of the best practice and the products that being researched in such a long roadmap as Ibu Prof mentioned us. Okay, thank you, Ibu. I would like to share maybe the very concise conclusion or summarize about what Ibu Professor already told us. Well, actually, the discussion that truly highlights the importance of innovation in the early childhood and education field, especially in Indonesia, with its richness, its how to say it, like diversity, and also in the way of preparing the golden generation of Indonesian children in 2045 as the best gift or the best present for Indonesians independence as 100 years, right? Is a very good for start from us, start from how we can putting the strength of Indonesian local wisdom, diversity, and beautifully combine it with the existence of digital media. Because we cannot deny the existence of digital media, right, Ibu Prof? But also, please, with and still with adult supervision, and how digital media actually can be integrated into excellent use. Okay, and I'm pretty sure that these are the points in her presentation that many participants can relate to and get some inspiration too. So please, I would like to invite some of the participants to have a question or to ask some question or discussion with Ibu Professor Dr. Yuliani Nurani as our third speaker. Time is for time about maybe 15 minutes. Please, everyone, any questions? Thank you, Ibu. Thank you. Thanks a lot. Okay, please. Any questions from the participants about the presentation from Ibu Professor Dr. Yuliani Nurani, MPD? Okay, maybe if while waiting for some participants to ask some questions, maybe I will
Izin Mbak
start.
Yulia.
Oh yeah, please Ibu,
Ya,
please Ibu Prof.
ini sepertinya videonya sudah bisa. Sambil menunggu, mungkin kita
Okay,
bisa tampilkan
yes,
videonya.
sure Ibu Prof. So participants, while Ibu Prof will present the videos of what already being produced during the research, right? We are happy to see that together. Please, Ibu Prof, you can present to us.
Ya, oke.
Thank you.
Wait a minute.
Yeah.
Ya. Bisa dilihat nih? Ya.
Yes, Ibu, it's clearly seen. Just maybe the sound does not really show up. I'm so sorry, Ibu Prof, for such an interruption, but the sound is not coming out from the video. Maybe you need to also share the sound when do the share screen. Yes, please. And please, participants, you also can send some of the questions through the chat box, and I'm happy to deliver it to Ibu Professor Dr. Juliani. Because since Ibu Prof is the only Indonesian main speaker at this event, I think it must be related with our context. So I'm happy to hear many questions from you. Thank you. Okay, I'm so sorry, Ibu Prof. I think there is no
Yes, yes,
opportunity for us to see the video again because of the technical
yeah,
issue or something. Yeah.
yes.
Yeah. Okay. I'm so sorry, Ibu Prof, about the situation, but participants, you don't need to worry because as mentioned by Ibu Professor Dr. Yuliani Nurani, you can still visit or pop up into her social media, right, Ibu, to getting more information about the products that being produced during the research, simply to improve what we can do in early childhood and education level. Okay, I think like are there any questions again for Ibu Prof Yuliani Nurani? If there is no question, I think we are happy then to hand it over again to our Master of Ceremony or our MC. And I would like to special thanks to all the audience for your participation. Your engagement, I think, will make this session so valuable. And of course, big thanks, big applause for Ibu Professor
You.
Dr. Yuliani Nurani, MPD. Ibu, thanks a lot for your
Thank you.
insightful presentation. And now I'm glad to hand over the session back to the host or to the Master of Ceremony. Thanks a lot, and I hope we can see you again. Thank you. Thank you, Ibu.
Yes, yeah, thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Professor Dr.
Thank you.
Yuliani Nurani, MPD, as our keynote speaker today, and Mrs. Yulia as the moderator for this session.
Ladies and gentlemen, moving forward to the next agenda, we are now having the first parallel session. To all audience, please kindly to join the breakout room for this session. If you need further assisting while joining the breakout room, kindly contact one of our committee. And this agenda will be continued by a break session for 60 minutes. We kindly invite you to take this opportunity to refresh yourself. Please feel free to take a break and we'll be back to seminar at 13 p.m. Jakarta time. Thank you.
Dear participants, you can available any room. One, there are some presenters from International, Hawaii University, United States of America, and many other options in breakout room session 2 as well. So feel free to click on the button for the breakout room. Thank you.